Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Having to start the morning with a sidebar conference, I don't know if that's a good sign. All right, let the record reflect that Detective Tom Lang is again on our witness stand. He is on re-cross-examination by Mr. Cochran. Good morning, Detective Lang.
Morning, Your Honor.
Detective, you're reminded you are still under oath. Mr. Cochran, you may conclude your re-cross-examination.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Good morning, Detective Lang. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Detective Lang, have you had occasion to speak to Ms. Clark about your testimony since you got off the stand yesterday?
I don't believe we spoke.
You didn't spoke last night?
I saw her briefly last night. There was some discussion.
Had some brief discussion last night?
Yes.
And that's about your redirect?
No, it was more or less what happened yesterday in court regarding your cross-examination.
Okay, so you just discussed that. Very well. That was last night up in her office, is that correct?
I saw her briefly in her office, yes.
All right, sir. Now, yesterday you mentioned seeing a video last Friday wherein you saw some candles burning, I presume, inside the living room area of the Bundy address. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was video from some TV photographer or video camera. Is that correct?
Yes.
That you could tell? All right. Now, a few questions about this blanket that we saw in the video we showed you yesterday. Do you know where that blanket came from?
Play the inside of the house.
So it was a video that it was a blanket inside the Brown Simpson home, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it was taken out of there. Do you know what kind of material this blanket was made of?
It was cotton.
And who took this blanket out and put it over the body? Who did that?
I did.
And where'd you find this blanket, sir?
Inside the house.
I understand that. Whereabouts inside the house?
I believe someone might have retrieved it for me from upstairs somewhere. I don't recall.
All right, so that all you know, it was brought down to you, and then you used it. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And as I understand from your testimony yesterday and looking at the video, the last time you saw that blanket was left on the ground when you left the location about 12 o'clock on June 13th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, yesterday you shared with us some thoughts about when you were searching the condo in this superficial search for drug material. And I think you said you looked around the condo. Is that correct?
I did.
Did you ever actually look inside any drawers in any of the rooms yourself?
I don't believe I did on that particular morning.
All right. Did you search through any closets on that particular morning, June 13th?
I did look into closets. As far as actually searching and removing items, no, but I did look in the closets.
All right. Did you search in the garage area and any cabinets that may have been located in that garage area, sir?
I did not enter any cabinets, no.
Did you search under the beds or any of the mattresses under the bed at all?
I believe I peered under the bed. I don't recall.
And with regard to the photographer yesterday we had in the video, is Mr. Rokar a sworn police personnel?
No.
He's a photographer hired by which division is he assigned?
Scientific Investigation Division.
Is he a full-time employee, if you know?
I don't believe anymore. I believe he's off with a health problem.
All right, he's not there now, but he was back in June, of course.
Yes.
Right. Was he full-time at that time, sir?
I believe he was.
Now, with regard to yesterday, we talked briefly about drug killings and asked some questions about them. You have found in your experience, have you not, that very often when a drug killing is to send a message, they are also crimes of rage. Isn't that correct?
When a message is sent?
Yes, when the killing is to send a message, they're very often crimes of rage. Isn't that correct?
Well, I guess that's open to interpretation.
Well, sir, I imagine that everything is, as you've shared your interpretation with us. I'm asking you now about drug killings. It's true, is it not, that sometimes when you have these Colombian necklace killings we talked about yesterday are crimes of rage. Isn't that correct?
I've never handled a Colombian necklace killing. I would imagine, however, if someone were to kill someone, that there'd certainly be some rage involved to that extent.
And where you talked before about overkill, sometimes you see in these crimes of message that there's overkill also. Isn't that correct, sir?
Yes.
Now, at Rockingham, you spoke about the Bronco, and I think at one point you talked about a left-hand side door handle. Do you recall your testimony in that regard?
Yes.
Doesn't mean someone couldn't open the door with their right hand, does it?
They could, but it would be in an awkward position.
All right, so your answer is it could be open with your right hand or either hand. Isn't that correct?
Certainly.
Objection states testimony.
Oh.
Now, in that connection, sir, you also shared with us that you believed that at the time, I believe you first saw this eraser head size spot on the Bronco, that the doors of the Bronco were locked. Did you so indicate?
I believe they were locked.
Did you ever check the handle? Did you go and touch the handle with your left hand so it wouldn't be awkward and make a determination of whether those doors were locked?
I never touched the vehicle.
So that was just your belief that it was locked. You never checked it, right, at that point?
That's correct.
Did you look inside that Bronco, either with a naked eye or with a flashlight, and look inside to see if you saw any blood inside there at that point on June 13th?
I peered in the rear of the vehicle and observed some items in the rear. It did not peer into the front.
I couldn't hear you. You dropped your voice.
I did not peer into the front. I peered to the rear of the vehicle and observed some items in the rear.
All right. You were asked some questions about when Arnell told you that her father was in Chicago. In the statement that I read to you before, and I'll be glad to show it to you again, in that statement that was written by you in your report, you indicated that Miss Arnell Simpson said that her father was in Chicago. Isn't that correct?
I believe so.
All right. In that statement, you don't mention anything at all about Kathy Aranda or what she heard from Kathy Aranda, do you?
I don't believe I do.
Now, with regard to this particular case, are you aware that when Mr. Simpson returned from Chicago voluntarily and arrived at Rockingham, he was immediately handcuffed by the police there? Are you aware of that?
I had seen that, yes.
You saw that on video?
That's correct.
You weren't there at that point, is that correct?
That's correct.
You were at or about that time still, as far as you know, you were at Bundy, and then you then went downtown to have this conversation with Mr. Simpson, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know if he was handcuffed when he went downtown?
I don't believe he was.
He was handcuffed at the scene, is that correct?
When he initially arrived, I believe one of the officers on the perimeter did handcuff him briefly, yes.
Now, with regard to, you mentioned that Mr. OJ Simpson had a cut finger on his left hand, is that correct?
That's correct.
And he gave you an explanation of how he got that cut on his left hand, did he not?
Objection, Your Honor.
I can answer that. You can answer that yes or no.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Yes.
Sustained.
An explanation, yes or no?
Sustained.
May we approach, Your Honor, because you were going to check something anyway on this. We ended on this yesterday. May we approach?
Yes. All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Cochran?
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you discuss with Mr. Simpson his cut finger? Yes,
Yes.
yes or no? And was that when you were downtown at the Parker Center after 1:30 on June 13th, 1994, sir?
Yes.
Now, as part of your investigation here, did you send officers to Chicago as part of the investigation?
Yes, I did.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
And what was the name of the officers you sent to Chicago?
Detectives Looper.
I'd like to make him my own witness for this point, Your Honor. I know it'll be available.
Well,
She's
hold on.
arguing, Your Honor.
Hold on. Overruled. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is the name of the officer or officers that you sent to Chicago, sir, in this case?
Detectives Looper, L-U-P-E-R, and LaFall, capital L-E, capital F-A-L-L.
And can you tell us, Detective, when they went to Chicago as part of this investigation?
I believe it was shortly after the murders, a week or so, 10 days, I don't recall exactly,
A week,
perhaps longer,
a week or so after June 12th. Is that correct?
perhaps. I don't have the log in front of me.
Now, in the course of your investigation, sir, you had an extensive search conducted looking for bloody clothes and looking for a bloody knife or knives. Isn't that correct?
There were searches, yes.
All right. And where all did you have searched? Where did you have searched?
Same
connection.
objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
There were searches for bloody clothing around the location at Bundy, trash cans at the location, the dumpster in the adjoining condominium, the alleyway, the shrubberies around the house, immediate area. There was searches conducted on foot between the Bundy and the Rockingham locations, various trash cans, trash containers. There was a vacant field off of Sunset that was searched, as were several areas that came to our attention by various leads that we received that are documented.
And you documented all these searches. Did you search in Chicago, Illinois?
There was a search in Chicago, yes.
And was that done by Chicago police or by Detectives Looper and LaFall, if you know?
Both.
So when they went back, they also searched, but you'd also had it done by Chicago police who worked with you. Is that correct?
The Chicago police assisted us.
And during the course of these various searches, a number of weapons were turned in. Is that correct? Or you found a number of weapons?
There were some knives that were found, yes.
Did you find any bloody clothes?
No.
Now, with regard to this case, you shared with us yesterday that you had interviewed some 170 witnesses or thereabouts. Is that correct?
I believe there's something like 170 formal interviews, yes.
Formal interviews, and you've also been all around the world and talking to people in connection with this investigation. Isn't that correct? Are you
I haven't physically been around the world. We've had information we've received from various parts of the world, yes.
Well, by that connection, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about you as the lead investigator. You've had occasion to have people go to places around the world in the course of this investigation. Isn't that correct?
Let's say around the world in
Well-
this country.
Okay. Well, haven't you had somebody go to Italy?
I have not, no.
Have you had anybody in connection? One of the investigators in this case go to Italy.
I have not. I believe the district attorney's office may have.
All right. Well, that's part of the prosecution team, is it, sir?
Yes, but that wasn't done in my direction.
All right. Have you had individuals go to New York?
Yes,
You had individuals go to Connecticut?
yes.
Individuals go to Alaska?
Your objection, this is all vague. For what purpose?
Overruled.
Alaska?
I don't recall Alaska.
Miami? Florida?
I don't know if we sent,
Bloody clothing, what?
Overruled.
Miami, Florida?
I don't recall sending anyone to Florida.
Bahamas?
On this case, no.
What other jurisdictions have you sent people to under your jurisdiction?
Alabama.
All right. Any other states?
There may be one or two others. I don't recall.
Can't think of them now.
That's correct.
Any foreign jurisdictions?
I don't recall sending anyone to a foreign jurisdiction.
Now, in the ice cream, what about Missouri? Send somebody to Missouri?
Yes, there was someone sent to Missouri.
In the ice cream example that we talked about yesterday, that there were photographs of the Ben and Jerry ice cream, so that we're clear, in the test done by the detective, that particular ice cream in the container melted in about an hour and 15 minutes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, are you aware of a lady by the name of Cora Fishman?
Yes.
And have you had occasion to review any statements taken from her?
Sustain.
With regard to Cora Fishman, you're aware that she was a friend of
Sustain.
Mr. Cora Fishman, Your Honor? I would ask Lou. May I approach?
Yes. Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. Regarding your theory that you shared with us, I guess day before yesterday now, regarding the fact that there was only one killer here, would you agree that you would not be able to rule out a second killer if one of the assailants at the scene had been standing in the dirt area and either walked out before Ms. Simpson started to bleed or walked out as you did without getting blood on his or her feet? You agree with that? That would tend to indicate that, debunk your theory of a single killer?
Overruled.
No, it wouldn't.
It wouldn't if somebody was in the dirt and walked out and you never were aware they were there. That wouldn't debunk your theory about a single killer?
With the amount of blood at that location, I would have seen some kind of a shoe print going through that blood the other way.
But, sir, the part of the question I ask you was if the person walked out before the blood had started to flow. If that had taken place, then you would not know, would you? Isn't that correct, sir?
I'm sorry?
You would not know, would you, sir?
If someone had left prior
Yes.
to the killing?
No, left prior to Mr. Cole Brown Simpson starting to bleed, as she did so profusely.
Probably not.
All right, so that's asking. Now, yesterday you shared with us the fact that you had, one of the publications you looked at was a publication by Lemoyne Schneider. You only have only one copy. I want to show portions of this to council.
Council cut.
How many pages is this, Mr. Cochran?
Your Honor, it is,
Perhaps we could have one of the law clerks step in.
it's about 7 pages, Your Honor. I want to use portions of several of the pages.
All right, let's,
I can, while we're doing
all right,
that, please, I can
Let's have
do
this-
something else. Yeah, okay.
five copies. Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. This publication we're about to get, that's Lemoyne Schneider, and that's a book on homicide investigations that you referred to yesterday. Is that correct?
There is a book by Lemoyne Schneider on homicide investigation, yes. Several editions, I believe.
All right. Do you recall what edition that you had read some 10 or 15 years ago?
No.
You don't at this point?
No.
With regard to, Ms. Clark asked you several days ago whether or not you had seen any pay and owe notes, I presume pay and owe notes being some indication that somebody owed for some drugs obtained. You remember those questions?
Those are those types of notes sometimes with people who are involved in narcotics. Yes.
Right. You recall being asked about that, right?
Yes, I do.
Did you ever at any time go to Exodus and talk with or see Faye Resnick to see if she had any pay and owe notes at Exodus?
No.
Now, at the autopsy, you were present during the entire autopsy, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you see any photographs taken during the autopsy, specifically of Mr. Goldman's hands?
I believe there were photographs taken prior. Generally, what they will do is clean the bodies up and take photographs prior to the actual autopsy.
Well, I'd like to show you a photograph, what's to be of Mr. Goldman's hand. Ask him, photograph. You can? Cut the, no, it's a hand. See. All right, do you recall whether or not you were present at or about the time that this photograph was taken of Mr. Goldman's hands at the coroner's office on or about June 14th, 1994?
It was probably, I'm sorry?
I broke in, I'm sorry. Appears to be a right hand.
A right hand, yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
I was not present for this particular photograph. I believe these were taken actually prior to autopsy and subsequent to the cleanup.
But you, in fact, saw Mr. Goldman's hand on that particular day, did you not?
Yes.
And with this, is this photograph a fair and accurate portrayal of the way his hands appeared at about that time? The bruises on the right hand and right knuckle area?
I believe so.
And I'd like to mark this exhibit as defendant's 1050, if I can.
1050.
We're having that mark now at this point. And with regard to the hands of the individuals, and I want to have the court cut the feed and show another photograph.
1050.
I've shown counsel the photograph, which I'll now mark as defendant's 1051, if the court would allow. And, Your Honor, with counsel, I've blocked out the face or tried to block out the face of this photograph, and the court may want to cut the feet.
All right.
Keep the feet cut. This is defendant's 1051. Can you see that? Can you pull it back a little bit, Mr. Harris, please? Sure. A little more. Were you present when you saw this particular photograph of apparently the right hand of Miss Nicole Brown Simpson with fingernails, et cetera, apparently being held by someone who has gloves on, examining those hands?
Yes.
And where was that photograph taken?
I recall those types of photographs being taken at the scene, but I cannot orient this particular one. I don't know where this was taken.
All right. Do you see the jewelry on the left hand of the person who's holding Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's hand? See the jewelry?
Yes.
And does that appear to you, seeing that jewelry, is that refresh your recollection that was perhaps a female who was wearing that kind of jewelry?
May well be. It doesn't refresh my recollection.
Well, at the scene, if this picture was taken at the scene, were there any other females there who would have been dealing with the bodies other than Miss Ratcliffe, the coroner's investigator that we've seen earlier?
No.
So it's best, your belief is it's probably Miss Ratcliffe, is that correct?
Sustained.
Well, who do you think that is?
I don't know.
Indicated he doesn't know.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Do you believe that picture was taken at the scene, however?
Again, I don't know. It may have been at the coroner's office.
All right, very well. Thank you very much. Now, you yesterday had indicated to us reading from being aware of a publication by Lamone Snyder. And I think you told us that you don't know the edition, but I think you told us it was somewhere perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. Is that correct?
Perhaps.
All right, I'd like to approach, and I have, court has now provided us with some copies of this publication, and I'll just ask you to place a copy here for you. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions all night. And Your Honor, I guess at this point I should probably mark this so that we have a number to refer to. And this would be defendant's 1052.
Perhaps people could be allowed to read it before completing the examination on the material. We have just as minute been given this evidence.
All right, take a moment. appear to be check marks along with the text. Is that
Yes, and those are put down, and we'll block
the pertinent
those out.
areas?
Yes, sir. Matt, you want me to ask another question? In a different area?
No, they need to be able to concentrate on what they're reading. Copy for you.
with the report, please.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Ford, you can stay there. I'm going to take a brief recess just so we're not all sitting here waiting for the council to finish reading these materials. They are technical materials, so they do need an opportunity to read them. I'm sure you understand the difficulty that we have when these things are just presented. I'm going to ask you to step back. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case. Don't talk to anybody about it. Don't let anybody talk to you. Don't perform any deliberations while you're back there, and we'll see you probably about, 15, 20 minutes. All right? Thank you. Have you had the opportunity to finish reading that?
I have your own.
All right. Deputy Magnero, let's have the jurors, please. Mr. Bailey, did you want to say something?
Sorry, Ron, I'm just anticipating the jury will come through the door.
Oh. All right. All right, we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel again. Detective Lang, would you swing the microphone over there, please? All right, Mr. Cochran, you may continue.
Two more questions, Your Honor. Detective Lang, with regard to areas that were searched by you on or after June 13th or under your investigation, did you have any searches conducted of any airplanes going to Chicago or coming back from Chicago? Who's that?
I don't recall any searches of airplanes.
You don't recall whether or not the American Airlines plane was searched under your direction or under anyone's direction in this case?
I don't recall an airline or an airplane being searched.
And no laboratories in the airplanes either. Is that right?
There was an inquiry regarding a laboratory on an airplane. I don't know if that was actually searched, though.
All right, sir. Now, just before the break, I had placed before you a publication entitled Homicide Investigation by Lemoyne Snyder. And this is an old edition, the 53 edition. And at that time, it was the 7th printing. Have you had occasion to review any portions of the 7 or 8 pages which have been placed before you?
Yes.
All right, and I want to ask you just a few questions regarding this. With regard to,
Sustained.
and is this a publication by Lemoyne Snyder that you relied upon, that you spoke about yesterday when you talked about publications you relied upon in forming various opinions in this case?
It's one publication I have read, but I believe it was several years after this was
All right.
printed.
Well, some things with regard to homicide investigation don't change from volume to volume, isn't that correct?
Certainly.
And I want to ask you a couple of questions if I can about it and ask you whether or not you agree with what's in the publication. There's something called, Your Honor, this is published by the same author, and it's an earlier edition, but
Is there a foundational objection? Sustained.
Your Honor, with regard to this then, the edition that you read was, what printing was the edition that you read?
I don't recall.
All right. And with regard to that, you're not aware if there's any differences between this printing that I have before you here in Defenders 1052 and the printing that you read some 10 or 15 years ago, are you?
I couldn't say.
All right. And for instance, with regard to the golden rule of homicide investigation, as far as you're concerned, that rule hasn't changed, has it?
Yeah.
Sustained.
With regard to estimating the time of death, when you read, did you read that particular portion of the publication of Lemoyne and Snyder that you referred to yesterday in your testimony? Did you read that chapter dealing with estimating the time of death? I can lay the foundation without asking
Well,
you.
you can ask him if he read it.
Yes.
Did you read that? And with regard to the estimating the time of death in chapter 3, in the paper you have before you there, what you read 10 or 15 years ago is consistent, is it not, with what's there in this publication by the same author, an earlier printing. Isn't that correct?
It appears to be generally consistent, yes.
All right. I'd like to ask some questions, Your Honor, regarding that. All right. Now, with regard to estimating the time of death, would you agree with the statement? Quote, "It is always important to know as nearly as possible the time when the victim expired. In the absence of witnesses, this information must be obtained from an examination of the body itself." Agree with that so far?
Yes.
Generally speaking, the sooner after death the body is found, the more definitely can the actual time of death be fixed. Agree with that so far?
Generally, yes.
However, it is usually impossible for anyone to establish accurately the hour and minute when life ceased. You agree with that?
Yes.
And so, with regard to the body, as you've told us, an examination of the body, that is done by the coroner. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so, if this is a publication that you agreed with and I'll base your opinion on, do you agree that it would be important to, as nearly as possible after discovery of the body, to have the body examined by someone trained to do that, in this instance, the coroner? Is that a fair statement?
I would agree with what is written here, that it is generally speaking, that would be important, yes.
All right? Now, I'd like to ask you whether or not you've ever heard of the golden rule of homicide investigation.
No.
Have you ever read the golden rule of homicide investigation as set forth on page 28 in the Lemoyne Snyder publication?
I don't recall seeing that, but since I read the book many years ago, I may well have.
Well, let me ask you if you agree with this, and maybe it'll refresh your recollection. Do you agree that under the golden rule of homicide investigation, that one should never touch, change, or alter anything until identified, measured, and photographed? Agree with that so far?
Generally, that's correct, yes.
Remember that when a body or article has been moved, it can never be restored to its original position. Agree with that?
Yes.
Now, during the break, I was not able to speak with you in connection to this. Is that correct?
No, sir, that's not correct. We spoke outside.
We spoke in the restroom, but not about this particularly, did we?
Yes, sir, we did.
But when you first left the stand, I went up to try and talk to you. The district attorneys tell you not to talk to me at that point?
No, they did not. They called me over to their table.
And I was not able to talk to you. Isn't that correct?
Well, I
point?
can't talk to everyone at once.
Well, didn't you say that I'm on the stand, Mr. Cochran? I've got to go talk to them first? Did you say that?
I may have said something like that. They signaled me first, and so I walked over there, and you walked between us.
Well, wasn't I up standing by you, sir, just as the jury had left the room before they ever called you, and I started to talk to you, and Mr. Darden then called you, and then the others called you after that. Isn't that correct?
You were quicker to get over here, yes.
The judge had directed me over there, and I got there first. And then you walked past me and went over to talk to them. Isn't that correct?
You were quicker.
All right, well, I won't comment on that. Now, with regard to this publication called Homicide Investigation, sir, the part, I guess, on page 38 that deals with examination of stomach contents. You recall yesterday we talked about stomach contents, and I'd like to ask you whether or not these paragraphs dealing with stomach contents are consistent with what you read some 10 or 15 years ago when you read this publication and which you relied upon in formulating some of your opinions in this case. Okay, have you read that?
Yes.
And is that consistent with what you read some 10 or 15 years ago?
I can't say for sure. I can't say.
All right, let me see if this will refresh your recollection at all then, and see if you agree with these statements. A procedure which is of great importance in fixing the time of death is the examination of the stomach contents. Agree with that?
This is hearsay as read to by counsel. The witness can read it to himself and determine whether.
Sustained.
All right, can you read this paragraph to yourself about the examination of stomach contents, I guess on page, this may be 39, I believe, Your Honor. It goes over to page 40, right before the paragraph that says importance of associated events.
Yes.
Have you read that?
Yes.
Do you agree with what's contained in that paragraph?
Paragraph doesn't address the digestion process ceasing at the time of death.
The question is, do you agree with what's contained in this paragraph, sir?
Generally, yes.
All right. And this is consistent with what you read some 10 or 15 years ago about the importance of fixing the time of death and the use of the stomach contents and making that determination. Isn't that correct?
Yes, generally, yes.
All right. And would you agree with the statement, I might, Your Honor, that if stomach contents are present, it is possible for the...
Objection.
What's the objection?
He relied upon this, Your Honor.
No, he did not rely upon this. He's told us repeatedly this is an earlier edition. That's number one.
That's not, just speaking objection, Your Honor. Speaking objection.
Sustained. It is a speaking objection. I'll see counsel at the sidebar.
Thank you.
If I hear another speaking objection from either side, the sanction is going to be $250. Thank you, counsel. Mr.
Thank you very
Cotton.
kindly, Your Honor. Detective Lang, with regard to the paragraph that I'd ask you to read on the examination of stomach contents, I believe you've indicated to us that paragraph appears similar to a paragraph you may have read in some later edition. Is that a fair statement?
I'd say in a general sense, yes.
Right. And in the course of forming the opinions that you shared with us yesterday, you relied upon the contents of the Lemoyne Snyder publication that you read. Is that correct?
Relied upon it for what purpose?
Well, relied upon it from a standpoint of helping to form your opinion, the opinions you shared, as this was a publication which you told us about yesterday, recall?
Yes, it's one publication I've read. It's not the only thing I've relied upon.
All right. I understand you relied upon other things. You had other experience, but this is something that you read and had relied upon. Isn't that correct, sir?
In
some
a
degree.
general sense, I suppose one could say that.
All right. Well, based upon that, the court's permission, I'd like to ask you just a few questions with regard to this particular paragraph and whether or not you agree with certain aspects regarding the importance of stomach contents.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you agree that if stomach contents are present, it is possible for the pathologist to tell with reasonable accuracy of what the last meal consisted? Agree with that principle?
Objection, Your Honor, this calls for speculation, it's beyond the witness order.
Oh,
Can you answer that?
I didn't see where you were reading.
I'm sorry, sir. I just somewhat paraphrased it, but the second sentence, if stomach contents are present, you see that?
Yes,
It is possible for a pathologist or a doctor to tell with reasonable accuracy what the last meal consisted of.
that's what it says.
Agree with that?
I suppose it's possible.
All right. Do you agree also that the stomach will usually be empty and from 4 to 6 hours after a meal has been eaten? Do you agree with that principle?
If the digestion process is taking place, yes.
And if the stomach is found to be well filled with food and digestion of the contents, strike that. If the stomach is found to be well filled with food and digestion of the contents is not extensive, it's fair to assume that death followed shortly after the meal. Would you agree with that general principle?
Generally, yes.
Would you agree that this entire procedure, which is of great importance in fixing the time of death, is the examination of the stomach contents?
It's one general factor that could be used, yes.
Do you feel, as I've indicated and asked you, do you feel that it's, in addition to a general factor, a factor of great importance in fixing the time of death, the examination of the stomach contents?
I would not rely entirely on it. Again, it's one general factor of many.
That you would rely upon, all right? Continuing on.
Is that a question? I didn't hear that.
So you'd rely upon it. You would rely upon it along with other factors. Is that right?
Along with other things, I wouldn't specifically rely just on it.
All right, sir. If the stomach is entirely empty, death probably took place at least 4 to 6 hours after the last meal. Do you agree with that?
As a general statement, yes.
All right. And in addition, if the small intestine is also empty, the probability is that death took place 12 or more hours after food was last eaten. Do you agree with that?
These statements do not address the digestion process ceasing at the time of death, so I'm having a bit of a problem with them.
All right, well, let's go back, and I want to ask you about this statement, not what you just indicated, sir. If the small intestine is also empty, would you agree with the statement that the probability is that death took place 12 or more hours after food was last eaten? Do you agree with that? Is that a principle with which you agree?
Generally, yes.
And do you agree, finally, that the interpretation of the variations between these extremes must be left to the doctor making the examination? Is that correct?
That's correct.
This whole area is an area where we have doctors who are trained to look at these things, the stomach contents, and make a judgment. Is that correct, sir?
That's definitely correct, yes.
And you rely upon a forensic pathologist as a member of the team in your cases throughout your experience. Isn't that correct, sir?
I do.
Very well. Thank you very kindly, Detective Lang.
Ms. Clark.
Detective Lang, you indicated on the page 29 of this publication, says it is usually impossible for anyone to establish accurately the hour and minute when life ceased.
Yes,
And you indicated you agreed with that.
certainly.
And based upon your reading of these publications and your experience and training, what is the narrowest time frame that has ever been assigned by a coroner to time of death?
Object to this one. Ever been signed by a coroner? Objection.
Sustained.
In your experience, sir, what is the narrowest you've ever been able to determine time of death, the narrowest time frame?
Without an eyewitness, never below 2 to 3 hours.
Have you ever been able to determine time of death to within 1 hour?
I've never heard of that.
And in this particular case, what was your estimation of the range of time for time of death for Ms. Simpson, Ms. Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman?
Objection. Objection.
And one of the 12,
One of the 12
objections.
The objection is this is improper. Read the rec, and also outside the, objection.
All right, beyond
Improper.
the scope. Beyond the scope. Overruled.
Sometime between 9 p.m. and midnight on the night of June 12th, 1994.
Could you have made that estimate any narrower had you called the coroner in at 4:30 instead of 8 o'clock?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Can we approach?
Yes. All right, thank you, counsel. Ms. Clark, you may continue.
All right, Detective Lang, in this particular case, what did you consider in terms of the factors that assisted you in determining the range of time between which death occurred for the victims?
I considered the last time that the victims were seen alive, considered their liver temperatures. I considered the time that they were discovered, and I considered the findings of the coroner's office.
Did you excuse me. Did you consider also the statements of witnesses, sir?
Leading suggestion.
Overruled.
Yes, that would go to the last time that they were seen and the time that they were found.
Do you recall reviewing any statements concerning witnesses who lived in the neighborhood who heard dogs barking?
Yes,
Did that play any
Overruled.
part in your determination as to the range of time within which death occurred?
yes,
Had you called for the coroner to take a liver temperature at midnight, would that have been able to narrow the time frame that you came up with, that is between 9 and 12, any better?
Speculation.
Overruled.
I don't believe so.
With respect to this publication also, sir, is there a section on page 30 and 31 concerning immediate signs of death?
Yes,
And does that talk about methods by which to establish that a person has in fact deceased?
Objective, Your Honor, the publication speaks for itself, Mr. Brown.
Overruled.
yes, it does.
And under number 3 on page 31, does it talk about a method of determining whether or not someone has died through their eyes?
The eyeballs and the changes in the pupil, yes.
Does it say anything about determining whether or not death has occurred by touching the eyeball?
Yes,
And what does it say in that regard?
Objection.
Hearsay.
Hearsay.
Sustained.
There's a method there involving touching the eyeball, is that correct?
Excuse me, Ms. Clark, I'm sort of beyond the scope of the redirect.
Yes.
There's no
That's true.
controversy as to
About that.
issue, and I think Officer Risky testified to that.
I'll move on, Your Honor.
Fine, thank you.
All right, so you were directed by Mr. Cochran to look at the passage concerning the examination of stomach contents on page 39.
yes,
And he read to you portions of that paragraph, you recall?
yes.
He did not read to you the first portion, the first sentence, did he?
Your Honor, there's some improper questions.
Or those.
He did not read to you the first sentence, did he?
Objection, Mr. Stage, Your Honor.
Let me check here. Overruled.
I don't recall whether he did or not. Is that beginning with a procedure which is of great importance?
Right.
I don't recall.
Nevertheless, it indicates that a procedure that's of great importance in fixing time of death is examination of stomach contents.
Objection, Your Honor,
Is-
form of that, regard objection, form of that question, the argumentative, the question need to be phrased nevertheless.
Overruled.
Yes, that's correct.
Does it say anything in there about saving stomach contents?
No,
Throughout this entire passage, in fact, does it say anything about saving stomach contents?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Overruled.
No, it doesn't.
Does it talk about examination of stomach contents?
Yes, it does.
Was that done in this case,
Yes, it was.
as to both Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown,
That's correct.
in your presence?
That's correct.
Now, you spoke on recross examination about the subject matter of lividity,
Yes.
and in this particular publication on page 34, does it also discuss lividity?
Yes.
With respect to time of death, is there any indication here that you can be specific as to the time of death based on lividity?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading suggested.
Sustained.
Seconded.
What kind-
Leading and suggestive.
What kind of, according to this publication, sir, what kind of determination can you make with respect to time of death based on lividity?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Have you read this passage, sir?
Yes.
Does it comport with your view of what you can determine in terms of time of death based on lividity?
Objection, hearsay.
Counsel, let me see it sidebar without report. Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
All right, and with respect to the issue of stomach contents, their examination for the purpose of determining time of death, sir, counsel pointed out to you that the interpretation of the variations between the extremes of an empty stomach and a full stomach had to be left to the doctor.
That's correct.
In your experience, sir, is there a fixed rate at which people digest their food?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope. Second objection, beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Okay. What are the variations in your experience, sir, with respect to the determination of time of death based on stomach contents?
Second objection.
Overruled. His experience.
That it takes approximately from 4 to 6 hours to complete the digestion process.
So there's a 2-hour time range in there for variation.
Suggested.
Sustained.
So is there a variation between individuals as to how fast or slow they'll digest?
Yes.
You indicated, or just now, 4 to 6 hours?
There's a 2-hour variation then, yes.
And what are the factors that can cause that variation of 2 hours between individuals?
There's no foundation, Your Honor.
Overruled.
One factor may be the state of excitability or lack thereof that the individual is in at the time that he's digesting food. Again, it's just a very general general statement as to digestion.
Mr. Cochran referred to Mr. McNally on August 27th going into Nicole's condominium with you. And he mentioned Mr. McNally trying on a knit cap that he pointed out.
Yes.
Did you ever see him do that?
No.
What would happen to trace evidence, such as hair or fiber, on that cap if someone else, an investigator, tried it on?
Be compromised.
What do you mean by that?
A true reading of any trace evidence that was on that cap prior to him putting on his head couldn't be made.
Might his hairs get on the cap?
Certainly.
Might other hairs that are on the cap that are of evidentiary value get lost?
Yes.
Did you try on the ski cap that was found at the feet of Ron Goldman?
No.
Did you try on the glove?
No.
Would you ever do such a thing?
No.
Is that something that you would do if you thought an item had any evidentiary value at all?
Never.
Now, the blood on the front walkway, sir, based on what you could see, what was the source of that blood?
In my mind, the source of the blood was Nicole Brown Simpson.
And did it go, that flow pretty much all the way down the walkway?
Yes, it did.
Was there any blood flowing from Ron Goldman onto the walkway?
None that I could observe.
Objection, speculation.
None that I could observe.
Did you see any shoe prints in blood on the front walkway?
There were partial shoe prints between the two victims on the walkway. I saw nothing to the east of the gate leading down to the sidewalk.
Right, okay. What, yeah, I'm talking about, did you see any shoe prints in blood leading away from the bodies down the walkway towards the sidewalk?
No.
Were you ever able to avoid the blood on the walkway from the point of the sidewalk up to the gate leading to the bodies, that front walkway, unless you stepped through the grass and the shrubbery?
Objection upon that question, Your Honor. Leading suggested they.
Sustained leading.
How, did you walk up to the bodies in the shrubbery, sir?
Yes.
Did you observe the walkway?
Yes.
Could you see a way of walking on that walkway without stepping in blood?
There were ways to do that, yes.
And how were you able to do that?
Objection, fact, not evidence.
Sustained.
Did you do that?
Generally, initially I did not. There were areas on the walkway that there were no blood.
Could you tell whether there were enough of those areas that if someone wanted to, they could step between the blood spots and on the clean areas of the walkway?
Objection, speculative.
Oh, well.
Certainly.
Could you do that in the dark?
Objective, Your Honor. Speculation, speculative.
Sustained.
Were you able to see those clean spots on the front walkway without your flashlight?
I was, yes.
And at what time were you there?
I arrived approximately 4:30 a.m.
Can you describe how difficult or easy it would have been to walk down that walkway without stepping in blood?
Objection, form of question, Your Honor. Compound.
Calls for speculation.
You were able to see where the clean spots were, sir?
Yes,
How were you able to see that?
by looking.
Okay. Were you able to see what kind of path you'd have to take to avoid the blood on the front walkway?
It was very evident to me which paths to take in order to avoid the blood.
Okay, could you just walk 1 foot in front of the other and walk straight down the walkway?
Objection,
No.
Your Honor. It's asking that.
Oh,
No.
What kind of path would you have to take to avoid the blood on the front walkway?
You would have to step where there is no blood.
And how difficult or easy was that?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
At this point, overruled.
To me, there was no great difficulty in doing that if one were to look where one was walking.
To step carefully.
That's correct.
Objection, the last statement.
Overruled. Overruled.
And do you know how you take pictures of invisible shoe prints?
No.
Did you recall the black Jeep that you found parked in the rear driveway of 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
Did any defense investigators ask you for pictures of the tires of that black Jeep?
No.
And did you determine who that black Jeep belonged to?
Yes.
Nicole?
That's correct.
That's objection. It's not conflict.
Withdrawn?
Withdrawn.
Thank you.
Did any defense investigator ask to examine the tires of that Jeep?
Objection. Hearsay, Your Honor.
Overruled.
And scope.
Overruled.
No.
Now, the coins that you indicated, the penny and the dime,
Yes.
where were they in relation to the Jeep?
They were north of the Jeep and the driveway between the Jeep and the north fence.
And the tire tracks that were pointed out to you that appeared to run underneath those coins, where were they located?
Overruled.
They were located between the Jeep and the north fence.
Was there, now you were there that night, sir, were you not?
Yes.
Was there room to park a car between the Jeep and the fence?
I don't believe there would have been unless it was a very, very tiny car.
People's Exhibit number 52, Your Honor.
All right, sir. Looking at People's 52. To what side of that Jeep did you find the coins?
As you look at the vehicle, it's to the left.
And it was in that area, was it in that area that you saw the, that there were tire tracks?
Objection, leading suggested.
Overruled. Yes.
Can you tell us, it's kind of dark in this photograph, but to the left of the Jeep, are there any objects that are on that rear driveway in front of the fence?
So 2 trash cans.
Can you, I'm going to use the laser pointer, sir. Tell me if you can see what I'm pointing to. Is this the area where the the garbage cans are?
Yes.
And if you can tell in this photograph, if you could direct the red dot, where were the coins and the tire tracks seen?
Up a bit, generally in that area.
Right here?
No, we would be generally in this area.
Can't hold it still for that long.
Down low.
Over here?
Generally, yeah.
Okay. Now, how many feet could you estimate for us was there between the side of the Jeep and those garbage cans?
You can estimate approximately 5 feet.
Indicated a location with the laser that is between the Jeep on the center of the photograph and the fence, which is to its left.
Can I show you the same photograph on Yelmo so it'd be a little bit lighter?
One, please.
All right, there we go. All right, now looking at this photograph, sir, can you tell us, locate for us where the tire tracks pointed out underneath the coins were in this photograph?
Well, they'd be just, again, to the left of the vehicle.
Just to the left of the Jeep?
Yes.
Go ahead. Can you direct the dot?
Down a little bit, in that general area. I can't tell from here, but it's in that general area.
Right there?
I can't say whether it was right there, again, in that general area between the vehicle and the north fence. Approximately in that area, yes.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, may I print this photograph be marked as People 62A?
Yes.
Now, did,
Do we need to switch? Proceed.
did you have any information as to whether, as to where that Jeep was when Officer Risky first appeared on the scene at approximately midnight?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
This is
Yeah,
found,
so,
Beyond the scope. Actually, it goes to tire tracks? Or will proceed?
My information is that it was found in the location you see it here.
That is hearsay. What he
I'm-
was told, what he was told by Risky.
I'm asking to explain subsequent actions, Your Honor. This is foundational.
Well, Officer Risky testified that's what he saw, correct?
Yes, he did.
All right.
Yes, he did.
Other than the color, that's what he saw.
Okay.
Okay.
Did Officer Risky give you some information about where that Jeep was located when he first responded to the scene at midnight?
I believe it came to Detective Phillips.
Did it come to you eventually?
Yes.
And after you learned that, sir, based on that information and your observations at the crime scene, what, if any, evidentiary value did those tire tracks underneath the coins have for you?
None.
And why is that?
Number one, it's a commonly used cement surface where vehicles are parked. There's no way to tell the age of a tire mark, and besides, there was no way that a vehicle could have fit between the Grand Cherokee and the fence that I could see.
So in your opinion, was there any way that those tire tracks could have been associated with the vehicle driven by the suspect?
No.
I'm a strike.
About that melting ice cream,
Oh, I move a strike. Since-
What grounds?
about that melting ice cream, sir, the experiment that was performed, you saw the photograph of the condition of the ice cream after an hour and 15 minutes?
In my experiment?
In the, not yours, but the experiment that was conducted?
Yes.
And you recall your observation of the ice cream that you observed at 4:30 in the morning, 4 hours after Officer Risky responded to the scene at 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
How different did the ice cream that you saw 4 hours after the scene was discovered by Officer Risky than it looked in the experiment to you after an hour and 15 minutes?
Objection, Your Honor. Objection. Home of that question. Foundation.
Sustained. Foundation.
Okay. Did you observe the ice cream in the experiment after an hour and 15 minutes?
Observed the photograph, yes.
You observed what condition it was in?
Yes.
And when you arrived at the scene at 4:30, did you observe the ice cream on the banister in the Ben & Jerry's cup?
Yes.
And did you receive information from Officer Risky concerning the time that he first observed that cup?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Yes.
And the ice cream that you saw at 4:30 a.m. at 875 South Bundy, how did it look in comparison to the photograph of the ice cream that you saw after it had melted an hour and 15 minutes?
Objection, Your Honor. I like to put you on.
All right, with the reporter. All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Clark, you may continue. About to ask if he compared the photograph with his recollection at 4:30.
Thank you. Detective Lang, the ice cream that you saw at 4:30 a.m. at 875 South Bundy, how did it look in comparison to the photograph of the ice cream that you saw after it melted for an hour and 15 minutes in the experiment?
Very similar.
Now, let me ask you some, Faye Resnick. Did you ever have any information that Faye Resnick was being threatened by drug dealers?
No.
Did you have any evidence to indicate that Faye Resnick owed money to drug dealers?
No.
Do you have any evidence to show that drug dealers had anything to do with these murders?
None.
And was there anything in Faye Resnick's book that caused you to form the opinion that drug dealers committed these murders?
Check the form back question based upon anything in the book.
Overruled.
Nothing.
And was there anything in the book that changed your opinion concerning?
Excuse me, counsel. We have to report her. Ms. Clark.
Did Ms. Resnick's book have any impact on your opinion concerning your theory of this case?
None whatsoever.
All right, so now you looked at all the evidence in this case, is that right?
Yes.
And you've heard all these rumors. In your experience, sir, what is your opinion?
Overruled.
In your experience, sir, what ultimately led you to this defendant?
Your like approach.
Sustained.
Yes. We're not approach yet.
Let me ask you this, sir. Has Nicole's condominium since been cleaned out and prepared for resale?
Yes.
Has the discovery of any drug items or paraphernalia ever been brought to your attention, recovered from her place?
No.
Your Honor, just hearsay.
Sustained. Curious to disregard last question and answer.
Has any evidence of drugs or drug paraphernalia recovered from her condominium been brought to your attention?
Hearsay, objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Has evidence been brought to you, Detective Lang, recovered from Ms. Nicole Brown's condominium consisting of drugs or drug paraphernalia?
Objection, hearsay.
That's not hearsay. Overruled.
No.
Other than rumor and innuendo, have you recovered any evidence that causes you to believe this is a drug-related murder?
Object, Your Honor, this argument is.
Sustained.
After the examination of the evidence in this case, sir, what evidence is it that causes you to believe that this is not a drug-related murder?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer.
Sustain.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
I thought we asked that question once already.
May I have a moment? Did you, in the course of your investigation, sir, I think you indicated that you had the area around Nicole Brown's condominium examined for unusual vehicles.
Outside the scope. Objection. Outside the scope.
Appears to be. Where we
Can we approach?
link
that?
it up?
I will.
Proceed.
Did you do that, sir?
I caused that to be done, yes.
Did you locate the car? Did you locate a car that was associated with either of the victims parked on the street near her condominium?
Hearsay, Your Honor. Outside the scope.
I'm going to overrule at this point, but I assume you're going to link this up.
I am.
All right.
There was one located, yes.
And what was that?
A vehicle driven to the location by Mr. Goldman parked on Dorothy Street, south of the Bundy location,
Facing which way on Dorothy?
facing west.
Were you aware of,
Objection being suspected of evidence. Objected.
Overrule.
and where did Ron Goldman live in relation to the Mezzaluna and Nicole Brown's condominium?
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope.
Was
Let
the
me
court
see
like me to
counsel
approach?
without the court reporter, please. All right, Ms. Clark?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Keys?
Yes, that's what I wanted to go. Thank you, Your Honor. You recall the keys that were found near the body of Ron Goldman, sir?
Yes.
Were those keys checked to find out what, if anything, they opened?
I'd like a little more foundation, objection to foundation.
Sustained. Rephrase.
Did you check those keys, sir, to determine whether or not they fit any cars in the area?
I checked them with the owners, with the owner of the keys, yes.
Okay. And what did those keys fit?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained. Did you do that personally?
No, Your Honor.
Did you have that done under your, at your request?
The keys were not physically used to check the vehicle. They were at,
That's it.
Or that's overruled on that ground. Proceed. They were not physically checked.
they were identified by the owner of the vehicle and the keys to me.
Hearsay.
And
That's
what,
hearsay.
Move strike.
All right, that'll be stricken. Jury to disregard.
was that vehicle moved from the location, sir?
It was impounded, yes,
Was it towed away?
yes.
And what happened to the keys that were found near the body of Ron Goldman?
They were ultimately turned over to their owner.
Who was?
First name was Andrea. I would have to look. Her last name escapes me at the moment.
Okay, did you speak to her, sir?
I interviewed her, yes.
She a friend of Ron Goldman's?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you attempt to determine what, when you gave those keys back to her, did you ask her questions about what they were, whether she recognized them?
Objection, hearsay.
Whether or not he was asked is not hearsay.
Yes, I did.
And did she identify those keys to you?
Objection,
Yes.
hearsay.
Sustained.
She gave you information concerning those keys, sir?
Yes.
Hearsay.
Sustained.
She gave you information?
Counsel, move on.
Did you ultimately determine whether those keys fit the vehicle parked on Dorothy?
Yes.
Judge, this one, hearsay.
That's hearsay. He said he didn't do it. Is the owner of the car available?
Yes, Your Honor. She travels outside
Thank
the
you.
country.
Thank you.
The keys found near Ron Goldman's body, you released them to her?
Yes.
Is that based on what she told you?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Madam Reporter, do you need to change paper?
Yeah, maybe I can say some time. That's it. Secretary Lang?
You wouldn't be disappointed if I didn't ask any other questions, would you?
I'm sorry I didn't hear that.
So you would not be disappointed if I don't ask any other questions, would you?
No, sir, I would not.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Detective, thank you very much.
Your Honor, before you leave,
Yes.
No questions. May we approach with the reporter? There's a couple things. Well, you want to take the one, and I want to.
I need one other thing.
Yes, please.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before I release Detective Lang, I just wanted to re-instruct you as to something that occurred during the course of Detective Lang's testimony. During the course of his testimony the day before yesterday, the Detective Lang was asked questions regarding scientific tests performed on the blood under the fingernails of Nicole Brown Simpson, and Detective Lang stated that gave certain answers as to how that impacted his investigation. You are instructed to disregard that question and answer the topic of DNA testing, and the results of that DNA testing will be presented at a later time through expert witnesses, so you should disregard that question and answer. All right,
May we approach now?
can I let Detective Lang go?
Yes.
I'd feel much happier.
Yes, I feel much happier.
All right, Detective, thank you very much. Your
Thank you.
excuse, sir. Subject to recall, of course.
Yes, Steve. Still on call, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
And you recognize this particular bag?
Yes, I do.
Is that one from your house?
Yes, it is.
Hold on, here. I removed from that bag a white envelope on which is written one piece of green paper with writing. Taking out piece of green paper with writing on it, I'm going to ask if you recognize what that is.
Yes, it's my grocery list.
Is that your writing?
Yes, it is.
And does that, can you tell us how it came to be inside the brown paper bag that you recognize?
When I get through grocery shopping, when I leave the supermarket, I always throw the list in my bag.
And so this is the shopping list that you made?
Yes, it is.
Were you present in court when your daughter, Kim Goldman, testified?
I don't remember if I was or not, if I was asked to leave or not. I don't remember.
Do you remember coming to court with her on the day that this bag and its contents were brought to court?
Yes, I do.
And by that, I refer to item number 30.
Yes.
Did you see what she placed inside the bag?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
Ron's shirt and pants.
Waiter used one?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so is this the bag that she, and the contents that she brought with her equals 30 to court?
Yes, it is.
I have nothing further.
It's just one, two questions.
Please.
Ms. Coleman, as I understand your testimony, this was brought to court from your home?
Yes, it was.
So I'm clear, Detectives Tippin and Carr did not bring that bag to court. You brought it along with your daughter, is that right?
Kim brought it. Kim Goldman brought
Kim
it.
Goldman brought it? Mm-hmm. Do you know who Detectives Tippin and Carr are?
I've never met them.
All right, thank you very kindly. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Clark? All right, thank you very much, Ms. Gold. All right, next witness.
This will be Detective Mark Furman. Can we approach?
Yes. With the report of incident. Gentlemen, with regards to the next witness, I need to look at a couple of exhibits before we proceed. I'm going to ask you to step back. We should take about 5 or 10 minutes.
In addition to.
All right, I noticed we have a couple of new boards just being brought in.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense has not seen these boards, and I would invite them to take a look now.
All right.
Court's permission. We're also going to need a couple of moments to get some reports down here.
Please.
5 minutes to get the paperwork done.
Reports.
Sorry?
You indicated there's some reports.
They're not here yet.
Are they necessary to begin?
Yes. Absolutely.
Darden, do you want to move the exhibits? All right, Deputy McNair, let's have the jurors, please. Gentlemen, be seated. All right, the people may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people call Detective Mark Furman.
All right, Detective Furman.
Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in part one fully recorded report will be the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please have a seat in the witness stand and state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Mark Furman, MarkFuhrman.
Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Detective Furman, can you tell us how you feel about testifying today?
Nervous? Reluctant?
Can you tell us why?
Throughout, since June 13th, it seems that I've seen a lot of the evidence ignored and a lot of personal issues come to the forefront. I think that's too bad.
Okay. Heard a lot about yourself in the press, have you?
Daily.
In light of that fact, sir, you've indicated that you feel nervous about testifying. Have you gone over your testimony in the presence of several district attorneys in order to prepare yourself for court and the allegations that you may hear from the defense?
Yes?
And in the course of that particular examination, sir, was the topic of your testimony concerning the work you did in this case, the actual visitation to Bundy and Rockingham, was that discussed?
No.
And deal with side issues, sir?
Yes, it was.
All right. Now, what was the purpose of that exercise?
Objection. I've never been confronted with a criminal proceeding such as this, so I think it was a concern that some of these issues have never been breached before.
When you say you've never been confronted with a criminal proceeding such as this, you've testified before, haven't you?
Yes.
In criminal cases?
Yes.
Homicide cases?
Yes.
So what do you mean when you say a situation like this?
Well, it seems that the issues we were concerned with weren't evidentiary in nature or about the crime, mostly of personal nature.
All right, sir. Can you tell us how you're employed right now?
I'm a detective for the city of Los Angeles, currently assigned to West Los Angeles homicide.
How long have you been so employed?
19 years, six months.
And is that since you've joined Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes.
Can you tell us what your assignments were on June the 12th and the 13th?
I was the detective assigned to West Los Angeles homicide.
Okay. That was in 1994.
Yes.
In 1985 and 86, where were you assigned, sir?
West Los Angeles patrol,
And what were your duties in that capacity?
mostly a patrol car.
Now, in the West Los Angeles area you were assigned to, sir, did that include the Brentwood area?
Yes.
Did that area cover some very wealthy communities,
Yes.
include celebrities?
Yes.
Now, directing your attention to the year of 1985, sir. Were you a patrolman at that time?
Yes, I was.
Did you respond to a radio call which led you to the location of 360 North Rockingham in Brentwood?
Yes.
And you were on duty at that time, sir, were you?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell us what the nature of that call was?
It was a 415 family dispute.
And where were you directed to go?
360 North Rockingham.
And when you got there, sir, did you see any other officers present?
There was a West Tech officer already at the scene.
And what is West Tech?
It's private security that's contracted by quite a few of the people in the area.
And how many West Tech officers were present when you got there?
I only saw one.
Did you have a partner that was working with you that day?
Yes.
So the two of you and the West Tech officer were there?
Yes.
Was the West Tech officer already there when you arrived?
Yes.
Where did you go to when you first arrived at the location?
We drove, I believe we drove up Rockingham, turning on to Ashford, which brought us to the Ashford gate, which was open.
And did you drive into the driveway or park outside?
Parked outside.
What happened next?
I walked into the driveway and I saw two people in the driveway.
Who did you see?
I saw Mr. Simpson and a female that was leaning on the hood of a car,
And what kind of car was that?
a Mercedes-Benz.
And can you describe the female that you saw leaning against the hood of the car?
She had her hands to her face, so I couldn't tell much of what she looked like in the face. She looked like she had light hair, and it was hard to judge the height, but I would characterize as average height and average weight.
What was she doing?
She had her hands to her face, and she was sobbing.
And where was the defendant at that time?
He was walking on the driveway.
Which driveway was that?
His driveway at Rockingham, the driveway in Rockingham, right in front of the Mercedes.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual about the Mercedes?
The windshield was shattered.
Did you look to see what had been the cause of that windshield getting shattered?
I saw a baseball bat that was leaning up against the wall close to the front door of the residence.
Now, did you get a good look at the woman's face?
No,
Could you have recognized her again on a later occasion?
no.
Now, did she say anything to you at the time that you made contact with her?
I made some inquiries as when I first walked up as if they were the residents. Mr. Simpson responded saying that this was his house. And I asked the lady who broke the windshield, and she responded he did.
Did the defendant make any response?
I believe he admitted that he hit it and stating that it was his.
And what was the defendant's demeanor at that time?
Well, he was agitated, but he wasn't out of control. He was just agitated.
Could you tell whether there was any physical injury to the body of the woman?
I couldn't tell, no.
Did you see any signs
No.
of physical injury to her?
No.
And did you ask her if she wanted to have a report prepared?
Yes.
And her response?
She did not. She said no.
Now, at the time that this contact took place, sir, was the West Tech officer there?
I don't know exactly when he left the scene. I was concerned with the two people involved in the radio call. I didn't look behind me to see when he left, but he was not there when I turned to leave.
Did you know who he was at the time that you first appeared on the scene?
No,
Ever met him before?
no.
And your partner, do you know where he was at the time you had contact with the defendant and the woman?
My partner was next to me or within a short distance of me. I was taking the lead to at least ask the questions.
Now, did the defendant resist your being on the property at all?
No,
Did you arrest him?
no.
After the female indicated to you that she did not want to file a report, what did you do?
We left the location.
Did you write a crime report of your contact with the defendant and not of that day in 1985?
No, I did not.
Can you tell us, sir, what is a DFAR?
A daily field activities report.
And what is that?
It's your log for all the radio calls that you handle that day, the time you arrive and the time you leave.
Okay. And is that something that is maintained by patrol officers?
Yes, it is.
And what is the purpose of it?
To record the events of the day.
Now, you were working partners with someone else, is that right?
Yes,
Whose responsibility is it to fill out the field activity report log?
that would be the passenger.
Okay, and what were you?
I was the driver.
Okay. Do you know whether your partner, the passenger on that day, filled out a daily field activity report to log in the events of the contact with Mr. Simpson?
I know he made a DFAR. What he put in the entry, I do not know.
Did you make an effort to write anything else?
No.
Now, back in 1985 and 1986, sir, can you tell us whether you knew someone or met someone by the name of Kathleen Bell?
Yes, I can tell you. I did not.
But you do recognize the name, don't you, sir?
Yes.
When was the first time that you heard that name?
It was in 94, I believe in the fall of 94. I don't know exactly what month.
By the fall, you mean September, October?
September, October.
And do you recall when you testified in the preliminary hearing in this matter?
Yes, I do.
And when was that, sir?
I believe July 5th and 6th, 1994.
So you first heard her name after you testified at the preliminary hearing?
Yes.
And how was it that you heard her name? In connection with what?
In connection with the allegations of statements I made to her at a date sometime in 85 or 86.
And where did you hear those allegations, sir?
In the news.
And were you informed about a letter she had written in July of 1994 after the preliminary hearing to Johnny Cochran?
Yes, I did.
And have you had an opportunity to review that letter this morning?
I'm not sure if I reviewed that letter. I don't believe I reviewed the letter. I've seen a statement, but I don't think it was that initial letter.
So are you presently very familiar with the contents of the letter that this woman wrote to Mr. Cochran?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to ask that this letter be marked as People's...
102.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Objection.
What times it is? One.
Yes, sir.
All right, so do you recognize the printing here and the content of what you're seeing?
I'm having a hard time. Some of this is cut off on the right side of the screen.
Okay, I'm going to ask Jonathan to move it to the right, left, so you can see the rest of the lines.
Ms. Clark, would it be easier to give Detective Furman the actual copy, use the display for the jury purposes?
The only problem is that I don't have an extra copy. Maybe counsel,
You can just read the letter if she wants to work on all the content.
I'd rather show it to the witness, Your Honor.
I'll be happy to have my staff make a photocopy for you.
Great.
With the reporter?
No.
Mr. Bailey? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our break just so that we can make sure this exhibit is clear and you can read it carefully. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations or allow anybody to communicate with you. Detective Furman, you're ordered to come back at 1:30.
Yes,
Right?
Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll stand in recess, 1:30.
Sorry, I couldn't hear your point.
Are you ready with your exhibit?
Yes, no, I am. Let me indicate to the court that Mr. Bailey was kind enough to help us by having the original letter retyped in a form that could be shown more effectively on the envelope. And it is not the original, however. I'm assuming the defense doesn't object.
I will agree.
I think the court reporter, Your Honor, should be. I verify.
All right. I'll accept that.
Would you like to see it, Your Honor?
Yes, please. If I could have a copy. Could I have a copy, Ms. Clark?
I don't have an extra, I don't have the room. So I'll have to be asking clerk. Mr. Bailey, you gave me that.
Oh, you didn't expect?
nature on the copies is just for exhibition purposes. I assume the exhibit
All right.
will be the
Okay.
same.
You know,
All right.
here, like I do.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Keep it. Keep it. Let's
No,
just
I
get
have
the
the
jury.
original copy. I can give you.
No, I have that.
You have that.
That's why I said keep it. Well, let's roll. Deputy McNair, let's have the jurors, please. Gentlemen, please be seated. All right, Detective Furman, would you retake the witness stand, please? Let the record reflect, we have now been rejoined by all 12 members, excuse me, all the remaining members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Detective Mark Furman is again on the witness stand. Good afternoon, Detective Furman.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
You're reminded you're still under oath. Ms. Clark, you may continue.
Thank you. Good afternoon. When we left off, Your Honor, we were attempting to show an exhibit, and we now have it in a form that can be shown on the monitor for the benefit of the jury as well as the witness simultaneously.
All right, this is P 102.
10. I'm going to ask you, sir, when we left off, I asked if you had seen a copy of the letter written by the woman named Kathleen Bell that she wrote in July of 1994 to Mr. Cochran. I believe it was July 19th of 1994. And I was about to ask you to read that letter on the monitor. Could you now do so, sir?
Yes.
Take it you're asking Detective Furman to read the paragraph that's depicted on the monitor?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, for the record, this is the second full paragraph of the letter.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, sir, with respect to this paragraph, did you visit a Marine recruiting office located in Redondo Beach in 1985 between 1985 and 1986?
Yes.
Do you remember meeting a woman named Kathleen Bell at that Marine recruiting office between 1985 and 1986?
No.
Did one of the district attorneys on this case ask you to watch Larry King live on television?
Yes, they did.
And do you recall approximately when that was?
I believe it was in the last month. I think it was the program she was on just before the most recent, so I think it would be about a month.
So about a month ago?
A month, yes.
And for what purpose were you watching Larry King live?
They asked me to just look at the show and see if looking at the woman jogged my memory.
And did you then look at the show, sir?
Yes.
Did you see a woman who called herself Kathleen Bell?
Yes.
And did you recognize her?
No, I did not.
Next paragraph.
All right, record to reflect that what is being displayed now is the third full paragraph.
you read the conversation thus far as described in the letter?
Yes, I have.
Next paragraph. Have you read that paragraph, sir?
I have.
Did the conversation Kathleen Bell describes in this letter occur?
No, it did not.
Now, during that practice session, at the beginning of your testimony, we referred to a practice session in which there were several district attorneys. We referred to at the beginning of your testimony. That practice or mock cross-examination, that deal with the anticipated cross-examination on this subject of Kathleen Bell?
Yes, it did.
Did it deal with your actual work on this case as a police detective?
No, it didn't.
And how long did that examination take place for?
20 to 30 minutes.
And that conversation that is described in this letter from Kathleen Bell, did that occur, sir?
No, it didn't.
Now, back in 1985, we were talking about you responded to the defendant's home at 360 Rockingham pursuant to a call where you saw a woman crying, leaning up against a Mercedes-Benz. You recall that testimony, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever fill out a report that described that event?
No, I didn't.
Now, you saw that the woman involved with Mr. Simpson was a white woman, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you take any steps to further investigate that incident?
No.
Did you make any effort to encourage that the defendant be prosecuted for it?
No.
Did you attempt to persuade let me back up for a second. The woman that you saw there crying up against the Mercedes-Benz, have you since determined who that was?
Well, since it was told to me who it was, yes.
And that person is?
Nicole Brown Simpson.
Did you attempt to persuade her to seek prosecution for the incident?
No.
Could you have done so?
Yes.
Did you notify any news media about that incident?
No, I didn't.
Did you call the National Enquirer?
No.
Could you have patted the defendant down after that incident?
I believe, considering the call, yes, I could have.
Did you?
No.
Could you have asked for his identification as a result of that incident at that time?
Absolutely.
Did you?
No.
Sure, Detective.
I'm sorry.
Just pull it up, just look. Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Could you have called your supervisor to come and further investigate the incident?
Yes.
Did you?
No, I didn't.
Manny, can you hear?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Could you have interviewed Mr. Simpson concerning that incident?
Yes.
And did you?
No.
Could you have interviewed Nicole Brown concerning the incident?
Yes.
Did you?
No.
Could you have insisted on some further follow-up of that incident?
I could have, yes.
Did you?
No.
Now, did you continue to work at West LA after that incident, sir?
Yes, I did.
And did you have any additional contact with the defendant after 1985?
No.
Now, you mentioned that you did not write anything down to describe the incident, any kind of report back in 1985. At some point in time, though, did you write something concerning that incident?
Yes, I did.
And what was it that you wrote?
I wrote a letter it was addressed to whom it may concern, but it was addressed to the city attorney's office. I'm sorry, it wasn't addressed to. It was requested by the city attorney's office.
Okay, now, can you describe for us what that is? What that was? Was it a letter? Was it a report?
I believe it would be characterized as a memo.
And what did that memo contain? What kind of information did it have?
It just described the incident as I remembered it that occurred in 1985.
And why did you write that memo, sir?
It was requested by a detective that was handling a current case in 1989 involving Mr. and Mrs. Simpson.
Next exhibit, Your Honor, is a memo dated January 18th, 1989. Asked it to be People's
103.
103. Thank you. Was it your idea to write this letter, sir?
No.
You wrote it in response to the request of the city attorney?
Yes, via the detective handling the case.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, what was your position at the time you wrote this memo, sir?
I was a detective trainee.
Still a police officer, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now look on the screen, if you will, sir. Can you show the date, Jonathan? Okay, can you move it up and kind of enlarge it? That's pretty small.
I'm getting seasick here.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't read that. Can you make that a little bigger, Joan? It's okay if we see only half at a time. It'd be better to be able to read. All right. Can everybody read that? Okay, thanks.
1492, can you read that? All right. Do we have an extra copy of this?
Certainly.
All right, Ms. Lewis, would you give that to Ms. Robertson for Ms. Hazel? Ms. Barber. Ms. Robertson. Thank you, Mr. Darden.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention, sir. First of all, to that first paragraph. Do you recall writing that?
Yes, I do.
And does that describe the events that you've just described for the jury as you remembered them when you wrote the memo?
Yes.
Is that an accurate depiction of the events?
Yes.
Now, you wrote at the bottom of this, oh, excuse me. You have here at the very top line, sir, a 415 family dispute. Can you tell us what 415 means?
As a disturbance.
And that's a penal code section, is it?
Yes.
And what did you do with this memo after you wrote it, sir?
At the time it was requested, I typed it and handed it directly to the detective.
Okay. Now, you put down at the bottom here, it seems odd to remember such an event, but it's not every day that you respond to a celebrity's home for a family dispute. For this reason, this incident was indelibly impressed in my memory. Can you... Pressed?
Pressed.
Indelibly pressed in my memory. Can you tell us what you meant by that it was indelibly pressed in your memory?
Well, I had never been to a celebrity's home before on a family dispute. Mr. Simpson was a very famous man, and once I walked in, I recognized him and those two things would make it a memorable incident.
Are you a football fan, sir?
Not as much as a basketball fan, but yes, I am.
Okay, and when you walked onto the property of 360 North Rockingham, did you immediately recognize him?
Once I got into the driveway, yes.
And was that event indelibly pressed in your memory?
More so when I wrote this than previous to June 12th, but yes, it was then.
Thank you. All right, now is West Los Angeles Detectives your current assignment, sir?
Yes, it is.
And you were so assigned, I believe you told us, on June the 12th and 13th of 1994?
Yes.
On the evening of June the 12th, 1994, at approximately 8 p.m., where were you?
At approximately 8 p.m., I was in east of Palm Desert and La Quinta Resort at a Protective League seminar.
Was that a police officer's function, sir?
Yes, I'm a delegate in the Protective League, or was at that time.
Okay. And what time did you leave?
I believe I left somewhere around 8 o'clock, just as a barbecue was starting.
Okay. And you left, when you left, you drove where?
I drove to my home.
Remember what time you got home, sir?
About 10:30.
And was there anyone home when you got there?
My wife.
Time did you go to bed?
I believe about 11, maybe a little later.
Did you receive a call at some point that night?
Yes,
after
I
you
did.
went to bed?
Excuse me. Yes, I did.
And what time did you get that call?
At 1:05 in the morning.
Did it wake you up?
Yes.
And what were you told in that call?
I was told by my supervisor, the homicide coordinator, Detective Ron Phillips, that we had a double homicide, and it was at 875 South Bundy, and that I would meet him at the station, and we would get a vehicle with a homicide kit and go out to the scene from there.
Were you told anything about the identity of either victim?
Yes, Detective Phillips said that the female victim might be the ex-wife of OJ Simpson.
And where did the caller tell you to go?
Excuse me. 875 South Bundy.
So where did you go? Wait,
Well, I
let
went
me, when you left your home, where'd you go?
To the police station at 1663 South Butler, West Los Angeles Station.
And did you meet someone there?
Yes,
Who?
Detective Ron Phillips.
And what time did you meet him?
Shortly before 2 o'clock, maybe 1:50.
Did you leave immediately then?
Well, we collected, not immediately, we collected briefcases, flashlights, anything we thought we might need at the scene, put it into a vehicle, and left from the station parking lot.
So did you drive in your own car or did you go with someone else?
Well, we drove in our own vehicles to the station and then put everything into a police vehicle and left from the station to go to the scene.
So you and Ron Phillips went from the station to the scene together?
Yes, he was driving, I was passenger.
And did you drive to 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
What time did you get there?
02:10 hours is when we signed in to the officer that was running the log.
2:10 a.m.?
Yes.
People's Exhibit number 51. Two, please.
All right, sir, do you recognize the scene that's being shown to you here?
I believe I do.
And what is it?
I believe it's the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy. I believe we're looking at it from the southeast corner across to the northwest corner.
Can you see any crime scene tape in this photograph, sir?
Yes.
And where is it?
It appears to be in front of the brown detective vehicle, in front of the two men standing talking, leading
That-
across the street.
People's Exhibit number 79.
And can you tell us if you recognize what's depicted here?
Yes, this looks like the front of 875 South Bundy.
Do you see crime scene tape in this photograph as well, sir?
Yes.
And can you tell us where in the photograph it is?
It's running with the street line on the outboard or the east side of the parkway.
That yellow strip that you see in front?
Yes.
Well, this photo to be cut too.
Oh. No, wait. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, can you tell us, sir, if you noted what the ambient temperature was when you arrived that night?
I approximated it about 60 degrees.
And when you got there, you've already indicated in the photographs there were police cars there. How many, if you recall?
I believe I saw at least 2 black and whites when I drove up. And I believe we were the first plane or detective vehicle. I'm not sure if I saw one down the alley on Dorothy to the west of the location, but at least two black and whites in front.
Okay. Were they in front of the location, sir?
In front of 875 Bundy?
Mm-hmm.
No, that street was blocked off.
Okay. Now, you checked in with a person who was keeping the log, is that what you said?
Yes.
We already have that log in evidence, don't we? It's already been marked, hasn't it?
The best of the way. That's how we first.
Showing you it's been marked as defendant's 1006. Alice, if you can, point out your name, sir, and your time of arrival.
It's the 10th entry on the log, 0210 hours. Our designation was 8W110, and Phillips and myself are signed in on that block.
As investigators?
Yes.
What's that 8W110? What's that?
That's Ron Phillips' call sign.
Is that what you use when you get on the radio
Yes.
to identify yourself?
Yes.
Now, when you got there, sir, was there any media there?
No.
Were there any people on the street?
Not that I saw. I just saw policemen.
Like any neighbors? You see any neighbors around?
I didn't notice any. I know there were none on the west side of Bundy around the front of the location, but I wasn't sure on the east side.
Were there any supervisors present when you got there?
Yes.
Who was there?
Sergeant Rossi, and I believe Sergeant Kuhn, but I'm not sure if he was there at that time for me to see, or it was a little later, maybe a half hour later.
Can you look at the log to refresh your memory as to when Sergeant Kuhn got there?
Yes, it shows Sergeant Kuhn on the third line arriving at 0030 hours, which would be 12:30 a.m.
So does that refresh your memory that he was there before you,
Yes.
as well as Sergeant Rossi?
I'm having a tough time reading the line above. Line 9.
Right. Is that where it says supervisor there?
It says supervisor, yeah.
And is Rossi in fact a supervisor, sir?
Yes, he is. He's a watch commander.
Do you think this entry here on line 9, the 9th box down was him?
It appears that it's an RO. Yes, it appears it was.
In any event, you recall seeing him there when you arrived?
Yes, I do.
Okay, do you recall any staff officers or command level officers there when you got there?
Not at that time.
Now, what was the condition of the crime scene when you found it? When you got there at 2:10?
Well, the streets had been blocked off with crime tape and police vehicles. We were advised that certain streets and alleyways had been blocked off. The front of the residence had been taped off and secured all the way to Dorothy and to the next street to the north. The north-south alleyway directly behind the residence had been blocked off with policemen at both locations to make sure nobody entered the crime scene from either direction.
Okay. So was there anyone moving around inside the crime scene tape when you got there?
No.
Who was did you make contact with the first officer that found the bodies?
Yes, both Detective Phillips and I did.
And who was that?
Officer Risky?
And did you make contact with Sergeant Rossi as well?
Yes, I believe Sergeant Rossi was contacted first. Risky came up while we were speaking to him.
All right, now, Officer Risky, did you know him prior to the night of June the 12th, 1994?
No, I only knew him as Risky.
Did you socialize with Officer Risky any?
No, I didn't know his first name until I saw it on the news.
Okay. Now, he was a patrol cop, is that right?
Yes.
Did you expect to see patrol officers at that location when you arrived, sir?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, almost always a patrol officer is the first officer to respond to a homicide scene. Usually it's from a radio call, and they're the first ones there.
What are a patrol officer's duties at a crime scene?
The first and foremost function would be to make sure that the possible victims are in fact victims and have expired. So to make sure that there's no chance of a resuscitation or saving the people that are, or person that is supposed to be dead. The second would be to make sure that the suspect either has been found, located, and arrested, or he is not at the scene, and make sure that the scene is secure from suspects. And then the third would be, after those two functions, is protect the crime scene and any evidence for the detectives in their investigation.
How many homicide scenes have you appeared at, not handled, but appeared at?
Well, I'd probably say it would conservatively 150 to 200, and generously probably more than 250 to 300.
And when I say appeared at, can you tell us what kind of functions you performed in those cases, homicide scenes you've appeared at?
Well, from early in my career to responding, just as Officer Risky did, to a radio call, to assisting and being part of homicide investigations, to being a primary involved in investigating the homicide.
So have you ever been a first officer at a homicide scene yourself?
Yes.
Have you ever guarded the perimeter, that is, guarded the crime scene tape at a homicide scene?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever helped to search the area around a crime scene for evidence or suspects?
Yes.
Have you ever door knocked in the neighborhoods around the crime scene area to look for witnesses?
Yes, I have.
And have you ever responded to a crime scene in your capacity as a detective?
Yes, I have.
On how many occasions have you responded as a detective to a homicide scene?
I've been a primary on 5. Probably responded probably to 10, maybe 15, some when I was working robbery.
Okay, now then, in your experience, sir, who do you expect to arrive at a homicide scene before the investigating officer or handling detectives do?
I would expect to see the patrol officers that initially got the call, and what officers they felt that was necessary to seal off the scene properly. I would also expect to see a supervisor, if not the watch commander. I might expect to see a command staff officer or the commanding officer of the division, either be it detectives or patrol.
Okay, and in this particular case, sir, when you responded to 875 South Bundy, in what capacity were you responding to that scene?
I was a detective that was to investigate the homicide.
You were to be the investigating officer?
Yes.
Then what did you expect to have transpired by the time you arrived at the scene?
I expected the scene to be secured, death to be pronounced to the victims, the officer to secure the location, protect the evidence, to make mental notes of where certain things were, and to help assist me in finding a path into the scene. Into the scene.
Okay. When you say help assist me in finding a path into the scene, what do you mean?
The easiest route to disturb the least amount of evidence so the scene can be investigated.
Then I take it, was it your expectation, sir, that someone, at least one officer, would already have been through the crime scene and examined the evidence as it lay, the bodies as they lay, and looked around in general?
Yes, they would have to do that to find out their condition.
Did you have any expectation as to whether or not the immediate crime scene area would have been looked through for suspects?
It would have to be.
And did you have any expectation as to whether or not the immediate crime scene area would have been looked through for weapons?
I would think it would have been, yes.
And then, of course, was it also your expectation that someone would have already, at least one officer, if not several, would have been through the crime scene to look and see where the evidence was and what it was?
Yes.
Now, knowing the possible identity of one of the victims, sir, did you have any expectation as to whether or not there would be any high-ranking police officers already at the scene or coming to the scene?
I would assume that there would be a captain that probably arrived at least. Of course, that happens with quite a few homicides. But I expected to see some command officers, yes.
And was that, why would you expect that based on the possible identity of one of the victims?
I don't think it would be just that. I think a double homicide would probably, I would absolutely be for sure that the detective CO commanding officer would arrive. Maybe the area CO captain.
What's area CO? I'm sorry?
The area commanding officer, in other words, the West LA commanding officer. Maybe the officer of the day, which could be a captain or a commander, and quite possibly maybe even a deputy chief.
So, is a double homicide unusual in your neck of the woods in West LA?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. So, based on that alone, you expected to see all that brass there?
Well, that, and then coupled with the possible identity of one of the victims, I would guess that it would be happening, yes.
Okay. All right. When you met with Officer Risky, what did you do?
Officer Risky explained what he had found, how he arrived at the scene. It was a very general description at that point. He gave an indication that he received a call, a burglar, a possible burglar there now, or something to that effect across the street. And then he went on to say how he discovered the front of the location and the bodies.
And did he describe to you what he found in the crime scene, sir?
Yes, he described it as he showed me.
People's, exhibit number 42, step there.
Yes.
Here, please.
You recognize the scene depicted here, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is this scene?
This is the front of 875 South Bundy, looking due west from the, probably the parkway into the walkway of the residence. The front gate is open.
Can you describe for us the route that you took? And when you say that Officer Risky took you up and showed you, guide the pointer, if you will.
The pointer would have to start off screen to the left, going at an angle
Is that
farther up,
farther up?
now going directly probably at about a 45-degree angle. That would be fairly accurate.
Okay, and tell us where you stopped.
Well, we stopped at the location where the gate post, almost, you can see the entryway.
Mm-hmm.
Just to the left of that, there's a post, a little farther, right there.
And could we put an X where you were standing? Would that be at the end of the line, sir?
Yes, Officer Risky would be in the front, Detective Phillips behind him, and myself in the back.
So you would have been, guide the arrow, please.
I think that'd be about as accurate as we could be right there.
Where's that? There?
No.
No?
Let's go right to the right, arrow to the right. A little more, probably in that area there.
Yeah. All right. And then Officer Risky would have been, as we face that photograph, to the right of the arrow?
Yes, right and at an angle that goes towards that, the post or the gate fence.
Okay. And you said who was behind him?
That would be Detective Phillips.
Okay, so you were the last one.
Yes.
And did you have a flashlight with you that night, sir?
Yes.
What kind of flashlight was that?
I had a small flashlight that I held on my belt.
Okay. Size of a pen?
Yes, I believe 2 AA batteries, an adjustable head so you could make it a wide beam or a very narrow beam.
And did Detective Phillips have a flashlight with him?
Yes, he had a larger flashlight, I believe. I'm not positive, but I know, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Officer Risky had a large, high-power flashlight with him.
Yeah, that was my next question. Okay. And were they using them?
Officer Risky was using the flashlight.
Now, is there any rules, sir, regarding crime scene examinations concerning how you get access to them, where you're allowed to go, how many people, that sort of thing?
Well, as few as possible. That would be the first rule. And you'd want to be able to take those people without destroying any evidence.
So when you were standing up on the, was that on the shrubbery you were standing there?
Excuse me?
Were you standing on shrubbery or on grass over there?
Yes, it was shrubbery plants.
Okay. Did you step on the walkway?
No,
Where the blood's shown here?
no,
Did Detective Phillips do that?
no,
Officer Risky do that?
no, not that I saw.
Okay. What were you able to see from your vantage point where the arrow is shown?
We could see a female victim in a black dress, lying as it's depicted in the photo, head to almost due north, feet almost due south, somewhat face down in a pool of blood. It appeared that blood was flowing down the walkway, predominantly in the cracks of the tiled walkway.
Mm-hmm. Those cracks, do you remember that walkway, sir?
Yes.
Is that grouting recessed? Is it deeper or lower than the actual tile?
Yes, I can't recall if it was actual tile or a press that they put into the concrete to make it appear that way, but there was recesses between the squares.
Where the grouting was?
Yes.
All right, and what were you able to see from that vantage point, other than the female victim?
Well, Officer Risky used his flashlight to point out several items.
And what did he point out to you, sir?
He pointed out the male victim for one which wasn't easily seen from that angle.
Hold on.
First, Your Honor, may the print that the image on the screen be marked as People's Exhibit 42B.
42B.
This next photo is People's Exhibit number 59. The feet will need to remain.
All right, sir, directing your attention to this scene, do you recognize what you're seeing here?
Yes.
Is that the condition in which you saw the scene when you responded on the night of early morning hours, actually, of June the 13th?
It wasn't that well lit, but yes, that's his position.
So it was even darker than it seems here.
It appeared to me, yes.
Were you able to, please describe for us the evidence that you were able to see as Officer Risky pointed it out to you?
The white envelope,
As shown in this photograph?
yes. The male victim,
Is that the position in which you saw him?
yes, the best of my recollection, yes. Officer Risky also used his flashlight, and the bush with the long leaves at the feet of the male victim. He pointed his flashlight and said that there was a knit cap and a glove there also.
Were you able to see them?
I was able to see something that was pretty hard to make out exactly what they were from that angle.
So he just told you at that point?
Well, yes.
Did you make some effort to see the knit cap and the glove that he pointed out to you?
At that time, we asked Officer Risky if there was another way we could come into this crime scene.
And why was that, sir?
It was, we'd have to step onto the sidewalk where all the blood was to get into the crime scene or touch the fence, which we were standing next to get around that. We didn't know what was on the other side. We'd prefer to go in another way if we could.
Okay. So were you trying to get a better look?
Yes.
Without disturbing anything?
Yes.
So what did you do?
We retraced our steps backward. We had a discussion, and Officer Risky said, well, we can go in through the alley through the back of the residence.
Okay.
We were pleased with that, so we walked back down Bundy South and west on Dorothy and then to the north-south alley, which was taped off, and we approached the rear of 875 South Bundy.
Okay, now, as you walked up the grassy or shrubbery area, which would be to the south of the walkway, that's the front walkway leading from the sidewalk up to the front steps,
Yes.
did you observe that walkway and the blood that was on it?
Yes.
Did you look to see whether there were any shoe prints in that blood on the front walkway?
The walkway that's leading from the female victim eastbound?
Right.
I did not see any.
Okay. Did you look on the sidewalk? You said you walked down the sidewalk south on Bundy and then west on Dorothy?
No, we walked in the street.
Okay. Did you see anything? Well, strike that. Why'd you walk in the street? Why not on the sidewalk?
The blood emptied onto the sidewalk, and there was paw prints, canine prints, leading south on the sidewalk in the blood.
I'm sorry?
The paw prints were in blood.
Bloody paw prints?
Yes.
Did you follow those paw prints as you walked down the street?
They headed southbound and then dissipated.
Okay.
Where? Maybe the next photograph be marked People's Exhibit number 104.
All right, People's 104.
Never mind. You said you saw bloody paw prints going south on Bundy?
Yes.
Okay. Where did they fade out, if you recall?
I remember it was just about at Dorothy.
And then you indicated you went where?
We went west on Dorothy Street to the opening to the north-south alley that led behind 875 South Bundy.
People's Exhibit number 38. People's.
Now, who were you walking? I'm sorry, sir. You indicated that you left that area right up next to the mailbox, went down the shrubbery and out to the street. And who was with you at that time?
Detective Phillips and Officer Risky, who was leading.
When you went out into the street and walked south on Bundy and west on Dorothy, who was with you?
Officer Risky in the lead, and Detective Phillips and myself.
And when you got to this location, sir, that's indicated in People's
This is People's Exhibit number 38.
38, thanks, Jonathan. Who was with you?
Officer Risky was in the lead. He went under the tape and showed us where to walk. Detective Phillips and myself.
Was there an officer guarding this perimeter, sir, this crime scene tape?
I believe there was, but it's not depicted in the photo, but I believe there was someone there, yes.
Did you all go inside the crime scene tape?
Yes.
And then where did you go?
We went into the rear of 875 South Bundy following Officer Risky.
People's Exhibit number 39.
Can you tell us if you recognize this scene, sir?
Yes, I do. That's the rear of 875 South Bundy.
Okay. And is that the manner in which you found it?
Yes.
People's Exhibit number 52.
Do you recognize what's shown here?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's the open garage of the rear of 875 South Bundy, a black Jeep Cherokee sitting in the driveway. Just to the north of the Cherokee is the entrance to a walkway that leads on the north side of the residence.
Okay. And was the garage door open when you got there?
Yes.
Did Officer Risky give you any information about that?
No.
Did you find out whether or not the garage door had initially been opened or closed when he arrived?
I did not.
Now, did he point anything out to you at that time around the area of that vehicle?
Not at that time.
What did you do next?
We followed him through the garage past the white Ferrari and in.
I'm sorry.
People's Exhibit number 70. And then People's Exhibit number 74.
Okay. You described the white Ferrari in those past two photographs. Do you recognize what was shown?
Yes.
Was that the Ferrari you referred to?
Yes.
Now, the area to the right of the Ferrari in the photograph, do you recognize that as a path that you took?
Yes, I believe that's the path that leads to the door that leads into the bottom rear of the residence.
And who led the way?
Officer Risky.
When you entered the house, sir, what did you see?
I entered the open door of the rear of the residence. Officer Risky pointed out some ice cream that was on the banister at the bottom of the stairs.
Can you describe that ice cream, sir?
Ben and Jerry's, I'd probably say a medium-sized cup,
What did the ice cream look like?
tan color, lumpy.
And next?
We walked up the stairs that were directly in front of that door, which led into a walkway which passed the kitchen on the north, a solid wall on the right, where I believe the telephone was, and some pictures, which led into a living room area with an open front door and a dining room area to the left or north.
During that first walkthrough, sir, did you look to see where there was any obvious signs of disturbance or ransacking or struggle?
I looked, but I didn't see any.
Did you see anything like drawers pulled out or property or items thrown around?
No, it was very neat, very clean, sterile almost.
Did you see any bloody shoe prints?
No,
Did you see any blood smears on the walls?
no,
Do you see any holes in the wall?
no,
Broken furniture?
no,
Spilled purses?
no,
Spilled jewelry?
no.
Now, you mentioned earlier something about robbery, working robberies. Did you ever work any burglary cases?
Yes,
Throughout the course of, you've been on the police force how long now?
19 years, 6 months.
And during that period of time, sir, how many burglary cases approximately or residential robbery cases have you worked?
As far as both patrol and detective?
Right.
That would be in the hundreds.
You seen evidence of ransacking in each of those cases, sir?
Not each, but it's a predominant MO factor on a burglary.
Did you observe anything inside this house that looked consistent with ransacking or burglary?
No,
You indicated you saw pictures. Do you recall seeing a piece of artwork on the wall of the living room inside that condo?
yes.
Can you describe it for us?
I believe it was in the dining room area on the north wall. I don't know if it was a lithograph or a poster. It was of OJ Simpson, and I believe it was in black and white.
And you recognized him in that litho?
Yes.
Okay, after you got to the living room, then what did you do?
Officer Risky was directing us, saying that I can't recall if he said if the door was wide open, but it was at this point. He walked us onto the landing, and as he walked onto the landing, he shined his flashlight on heel prints, footprints, shoe prints in blood, and pointed out at least one drop of blood to the left to make sure that we didn't step in that area.
Okay. When you say the door, which door are you referring to?
The front door.
Okay, and when you got to it with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips, it was wide open?
Yes.
People's Exhibit 45F.
No. Mm-mm.
I'm sorry, People's Exhibit number 35. I'm sorry, I think it's 75. And you'll need that fee for this photo.
Recognize what you see there, sir? Do you recognize that?
I recognize the photo, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what vantage point that's taken from?
It appears that it's taken from the landing that you would walk out onto from the front door. Looking down on the female victim, you would be looking in a northeasterly direction.
Does this describe what you were able to see? This photograph is pretty dark, but were you able to get this view of the bodies and the evidence from where you were standing at the top of the landing with Detective Phillips and Officer Risky?
Yes.
Were they using their flashlights at the time, sir?
Excuse me?
Were they using their flashlights at the time?
Officer Risky was. He was using his to point out any evidence or anything of value that he wanted to show us.
Okay. And is that, who's that man in the photograph there pointing to the bush?
That's me.
People's Exhibit 54-2.
Are these pictures getting darker, Your Honor, or is it my imagination? They seem, maybe it's just me. Maybe I need glasses.
This back, I think it appears to be, it looks okay to me. My technical staff tells me it's not degraded.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Can you see, sir, what is located underneath the bush?
Yes.
And what is it?
The foremost in the picture is a glove, and above it appears to be a dark blue knit cap.
Now, when was the first time that you saw those two items in particular that you were able to detect what they were?
From that landing, Officer Risky shined his light on those, once again showing several objects that he had previously seen.
Okay. And was he the one that pointed out the glove and the cap underneath the bush to you?
Yes.
What else did he point out, sir?
I believe he pointed out a white envelope that was just south of the male victim, close to the sidewalk. He pointed out a pager. I believe I observed a menu below the female victim. I'm not sure if I determined if it was a menu at that point, but I saw something. And he made a point to show us heel prints and shoe prints that appeared to be imprinted in blood that were leading westbound from that scene.
Did you, at that time, notice any shoe print near the evidence of the hat and the glove?
Yes, I saw a shoe print, but it was a good distance from me at that point.
So at that time, were you able to detect any shoe prints near the evidence of the hat and the glove?
It appeared to be that there was a shoe print there, but I wasn't very close to it.
Okay. In order to discern what those items were underneath the bush, was it necessary to use the light of the flashlight?
I believe it was. It certainly aided Detective Phillips and myself to see those items.
Okay. And so the,
People's Exhibit 54-4.
you recognize that, sir?
I believe it's the white envelope I observed that morning.
Now, earlier you said heel print between the, heel print in blood, bloody heel print, near the evidence of the hat and the glove. Do you mean heel print by a shoe or barefoot?
By a shoe.
All right, after pointing out the evidence you've described, sir, you said Officer Risky pointed that evidence out. What happened next?
He pointed at the direction that the shoe prints that appeared to be in the blood of one or both of the victims was marking itself onto the sidewalk and leading westbound. He also pointed out several drops of blood to the left of those footprints.
When you say footprints, do you mean barefoot or shoe?
I'm sorry, shoe prints.
Okay.
People's Exhibit 45E.
Are you able to see anything? Well, first of all, sir, do you recognize the location shown in this photograph?
And I believe this is the walkway, yes, and this is the walkway leading west on the north side of the residence, away from the landing that we were just viewing the female victim.
Okay. Is this the walkway that leads out to the rear alley?
Yes.
Tell us what else you see in this photograph.
I see shoe prints that appear to be dark and imprinted in what I believe to be blood that morning, pointing westbound.
Exhibit 45.
You direct the telestrator, direct the arrow to circle the shoe prints that you see in this photograph, sir, and that you saw that night with the assistance of Officer Risky.
A little farther down, stop right there, circle.
That it?
Directly above, stop, circle.
Wait a minute.
Let me try that.
And then one more that I can see in this photo. Stop. Right. That's close enough.
Thank you. Then you indicated that you saw blood drops to the left of those shoe prints.
Yes, a few.
Did someone point those out to you, sir?
Yes,
And who was that?
Officer Risky.
While he's printing, sir, let me ask you a couple questions. You said you came out the front door and stood on the landing with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips and looked at the evidence as Officer Risky pointed it out to you with his flashlight?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get any closer to the bodies than that?
No.
You stayed up on the landing, did you?
Yes, I did.
Did you ever go down the stairs and step into the crime scene or step over the body of Nicole Brown?
Later that morning, after I returned from Rockingham, yes.
No, but I mean at this time, did
At
you?
this time, no.
And so what is the closest that you got to the bodies of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown at that time, 2 a.m. in the morning?
Standing above them on the top of the landing.
Your Honor, this is People's Exhibit number 44B. And we didn't cut B because it's fine. Yes.
Do you see, now you indicated earlier, sir, that Officer Risky pointed out bloody shoe prints to you.
Yes.
Do you see any of those in this photograph, sir?
Yes, just off center and almost the middle of the photograph. There's an almost square imprint that appeared to be a heel print from a shoe. And in the pool of blood, I remembered a shape that is the dull portion in the center of that pool of blood that looks almost the same size as the impression on the step right above it.
Okay, why don't you direct the telestrator, direct the arrow to what you're talking about in the pool of blood and also in the subsequent shoe print.
Move to the middle of the blood, just the middle at the top. Yes, right there. Circle that.
Which way?
Circle, nope, back up. No, start over. Move the arrow down, stop right there and make a large circle the other way.
This is not obvious.
Too large. Circle should be about the same size as the imprint on the step just to the left of it.
Is it somewhere in there, sir?
It's pretty close. It's a little more to the upper right.
Maybe we could let the witness do it.
We could do that?
Could we? Want to try?
I'll try.
I mean, we've only got another 20 minutes today, and
It couldn't be any worse.
yes, it could. I could do it. Is it tangled?
Now, can I use this on the screen, or do I have to use it on this?
On that. It's harder that way. Okay. Thank you. Put your initials on it, please, up at the upper left-hand corner, please. We're missing part of that.
What do we want to mark this?
You know what, we're not done with this yet, Your Honor. If we could, I'm going to have him mark another one, couple while he's there.
All right. I just want to be able to identify it for the record.
Oh, yes. What is this number?
This is People's Exhibit 45, B, so it would be B3.
B3,
45B3.
45B3.
All right, do you see any other of the bloody heel prints or shoe prints that were pointed out to you by Officer Risky that night?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, it is People's Exhibit 45B1.
Now, how do I erase the error?
Okay, wait.
Oh, I've got it clear. Whoops.
Oh, no. This is devastating. Okay, next time do undo.
Try this again here. Whoop.
Undo.
Okay. I'm getting it.
You're going to make the last print of the circles of the steps going up the walkway be marked as People's Exhibit 45F1.
What happened to 44B1? All right, never mind. We'll straighten that out.
Do you see any other bloody shoe prints in this photograph, sir?
I cannot.
Did you walk with Officer Risky then towards the alley down the walkway?
Yes, he directed us to walk to the right of the prints. And yes, we walked to the rear of the residence.
As you all walked, did Officer Risky lead you?
Yes,
Okay, and was Detective Phillips with you as well?
he was directly in front of me, yes.
Did Officer Risky warn you where to stay away from as you walked down the walkway towards the alley?
Yes,
And did you avoid stepping in any of the bloody shoe prints or blood drops?
yes.
At some point going westbound on that walkway, sir, did the shoe prints fade out?
Yes, they did.
At what point?
It seems before we entered into a step-down area into a trough. I say trough, it's an area where you step 4 or 5 steps down into an area that levels off for several feet, then steps lead up once again and leads to the rear gate of the residence on that pathway to the alley.
By the time you got to the rear gate that leads out into the alley, sir, were you able to see any more bloody shoe prints?
I did not know.
As you were walking westbound in the alley, were you following those bloody shoe prints, the path that they took?
I was following Officer Risky, and he was pointing out things that we should note, and I saw them fade at a certain point.
Did you happen to note how many blood drops to the left of those bloody shoe prints you saw between the landing and the rear gate?
I didn't count them. I would say several, but I didn't count them, and I never went back to count them, so I couldn't say anything more than several.
Do you have a present recollection of that? How many?
Three to 7, 3 to 5.
When you got to the rear gate area, did you make any observations there?
Officer Risky pointed out some blood on the gate, some smudging on the upper rail of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed some blood dropping on the center of the gate, the mesh part of the gate.
They have to have it there to print it out.
There appeared to be evidence of possible blood on the bottom rail of the gate. I noticed a blood smudge around the door turn knob lock on the interior or the east side of the gate.
You know what, John, did you have a picture?
Yes. People's Exhibit number 48, F.
Do you recognize what's shown in that photograph, sir?
Yes.
What is that?
This is this trough area that I was describing, and these are the steps leading out of it westbound up to the rear gate, which in this picture is open.
Okay. And is that the rear gate where you just described seeing the blood droppings on the lower rung and the middle, and then the smudge on the latch?
Yes.
And what else were you able to see on that gate, sir?
Not at that time, but later I saw a partial possible fingerprint that was on that knob area.
Okay. Did you then walk through the rear gate, sir, with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips?
Yes.
And did he point anything out to you in that rear driveway?
Yes, there was other blood drops and change that was strewn on the driveway to the north of the Jeep.
Was there some effort made by yourself, Detective Phillips, and Officer Risky to avoid touching the blood on the rear gate?
Yes.
What did you do? How did you avoid it?
Either keep your hands in your pockets or keep your hands on your notebook. You don't touch anything.
Was the rear gate standing open when you got to it?
It was open.
Do you recall Officer Risky pointing out a blood drop near, just inside the rear gate?
I don't recall that. But he could have. He pointed out several pieces of items in that first walkthrough.
And if he had, would you have avoided it, sir?
Yes.
Now, what, if anything, do you recall being pointed out to you by Officer Risky out at the rear driveway area?
The drops of blood in the change, and he did make a comment that they didn't continue into the alley. I went into the alley and observed that for myself. I couldn't see any.
And how did you look in the alley to look for blood drops?
Using a flashlight.
The fact that you saw a blood drop on the driveway, but you were unable to observe any in the alleyway, was that significant to you?
Yes.
Why?
I would conclude that the person either stopped bleeding or entered some form of transportation.
People's exhibit number 48H. People's exhibit number 48I.
All right, sir. People's 48H and I, do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
It appears to be the size of blood drops that I saw in the rear driveway, and this appears to be the smooth concrete driveway in the rear of the residence.
Is that the blood drop that was pointed out to you by Officer Risky that you just described to us?
It looks like most of the blood drops that I saw, yes.
And to what side, if you're exiting, as you were, if you're exiting the rear gate, walking west, come out of the rear gate, the Jeep would be to what side of you, and the blood drop would be to what side of the Jeep?
The blood drop would be to the right of the Jeep, which would be to the north of the Jeep, and the Jeep would be to the left or the south of the drop.
Yeah. Okay. Was the Jeep to the south of the rear gate area?
Yes.
People's exhibit 48J.
And is that, do you see the Jeep that you've been describing to us, sir?
Yes, a black Jeep Cherokee.
And is that the position in which you found it when you were shown the location by Officer Risky in the company of Detective Phillips?
Yes.
You recall those garbage cans there, sir?
I think there was some there. I don't recall their exact description, but I think there was garbage cans there, yes.
From what you recall of the crime scene of that area that night, was there room for a car to park between the black Jeep and the garbage cans?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Or between the black Jeep and that wall or curb there?
I don't believe so. That would have been extremely tight.
You described change that you saw, sir?
Yes.
Do you recall where it was in relation to the Jeep?
To the north of the Jeep.
People's exhibit 48K.
Do you recognize that, sir?
It's a dime and a penny. That's, I believe, the denomination of the change that I saw on the ground was, I believe, pennies, dimes, and maybe a nickel.
How far, if you can recall approximately, was that change from the blood drop that you saw in the driveway?
It was in the same general area.
And were there any bloody shoe prints in that driveway area?
I did not see none, or see any, no.
After you went out into the rear driveway and attempted to examine the alley for blood, what did you do next?
Well, at that time, Detective Phillips and Officer Risky walked back out onto Dorothy, and I re-entered the house to start catching up on the notes from what had been shown to me so far and what I have observed.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by catch up on the notes?
Well, we were walking, and I was trying to take mental notes. And when I got an opportunity to bring myself up to date with those notes before I lost track of anything Officer Risky brought to my attention or anything that I observed.
Now, is that something that you customarily do at scenes that you're handling, sir?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of making those notes?
To start preliminary notes so I know who to direct and to where, to get my logistical organization set in my mind what I'm going to need for this scene, what I need for criminalists, serologists, trace evidence, fingerprints, photographs. Do I need light trucks? Do I need more personnel? Enlarge the scene, shrink the scene. I have to catch up with what I have, what needs to be preserved. How are we going to do that? How do we recover it? So there's a lot of items that I have to start thinking about for notifications to get people to the location to do what they need to do.
No, so you walked back through the house again, entering through that same, excuse me. You re-entered the house through the garage, is that right, sir?
Yes,
And was that the same path going to the right of the Ferrari?
yes.
Where did you go, all look throughout the house, or did you walk straight to the living room area?
I walked to the living room area. We had been previously shown the upstairs and the bathroom.
Who showed you that?
Officer Risky,
And when was that?
during the initial walkthrough.
Okay. So when you went in with Detective Phillips and Officer Risky, he showed you the kitchen area, did he?
Yes, he didn't. We didn't walk through the kitchen area. We walked to the right of it. He showed us. He just took us upstairs and said showed us candles burning in the bathroom. There was candles burning in the living room.
Okay. And did you notice upstairs what the condition of the master bedroom was?
There was nothing disturbed that I saw.
Okay. By disturbed, did you see any evidence of blood?
No,
Did you see any evidence of drawers pulled out?
no,
Did you see jewelry thrown around?
no,
Did you see clothes thrown around?
no,
Did you see bloody shoe prints on the carpeting?
no, I didn't.
And in the bathroom, did you see any of those things?
No,
Did you look into any other rooms upstairs?
if we did, we didn't enter them. We just looked inside. There didn't appear to be anything that Officer Risky had discovered earlier, and there didn't appear to be anything that we noted
Anything?
of any unusual or evidentiary value. Nothing that was consistent with the exterior.
Okay. When you say nothing that was consistent with the exterior, can you explain what you mean by that, sir?
There was a lot of blood evidence on the exterior of the house. Someone had fled the scene that was bleeding. We had 2 victims that had bled quite a lot.
And did you see any of that kind of blood or bleeding inside the house?
Not at all.
Any dirt that appeared to have been tracked inside from outside the house?
Not that I saw, no.
Or leaves from the foliage around the crime scene outside the house? Did you
No.
see that tracked inside?
No.
So when you went back inside and Detective Phillips and Officer Risky went out onto Dorothy, did you walk straight through to sit down in the living room?
Yes, I sat down on the edge of the couch nearest the right side or the south side of the front door.
So what was the purpose of going back inside? Was that to do another search?
No, I wanted to catch up on my notes when everything was fresh right then.
Sure. Yeah, I have here People's 104.
All right, People's 104. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, which are you speaking of?
I'm about to mark another exhibit. I'm just making sure it's 104 and not 105.
No, they withdrew that. All right, 104.
First of all, sir, I'm going to show it to you and ask you to tell me if these appear to be the notes that you took in the early morning hours of June the 13th, 1994 at 875 South Bundy.
Those are on my notes, yes.
So that the jury can follow along, I'm going to ask that they be.
These are 3 pages of Detective Furman's notes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Proceed.
Thank you.
One, please.
Okay, do you recognize that writing, sir?
Yes, that's my writing.
That's yours. Are these the notes you've just identified for us, sir?
Excuse me?
Are these the notes you've just identified as having taken on the early morning hours, sir? Of
Yes.
June the 13th? All right, when you say there at the beginning, at scene, 2:10 hours, that 2:10 in the morning, sir?
Yes.
And what is it you're telling us there?
I'm just making a notation. My arrival at the scene was at 02:10 hours. And I contacted a Sergeant Rossi, who's the morning watch or AM watch commander at West LA.
And then you put item 1, Officer Risky. And is that what Officer Risky reported to you, sir, in that first item?
That's what I concluded. In other words, a condensed version, yes.
Now, what is the purpose of these notes? Is this a formal report that you're making, sir?
I'd characterize these as my first impression or my rough notes.
And with respect to item 2, was that information passed on to you by Officer Risky?
Yes.
Now, again, with respect to item 3, again,
Yes.
is that what was passed on to you by Officer Risky?
Yes.
At the time that you responded to the scene, sir, at 2:10 a.m., did you know what the cause of death was?
No.
Did Officer Risky know what the cause of death was?
No.
You have the last line of paragraph 3, POSS GSW. Can you
Yes.
interpret for us what that means?
It means possible gunshot wound.
And
I'm sorry?
I'm just looking at the clock. I just noticed it as
No, why don't we finish this item?
this item's 3 pages long. I'll be delighted, whatever the court wants. I'm just giving the court fair warning that we've got about 20 items, 17 items here.
You want to finish the item?
We finished item 3. Is that what you want me to
Or why
do?
don't you finish the page?
Okay. And item 4. You indicate here that the residence appears untouched, no ransacking.
Those are my observations.
And is that basically what you've conveyed to us here today?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Was that significant to you, sir?
I believe it appeared whatever happened happened to whoever was inside the residence, did not expect to be encountered in any form of confrontation.
And what about with respect to whether the killer went inside the house at any point after the murders?
I believe items 3 and maybe 4 would indicate that they did not.
That's the end of that page, Your Honor.
That's all you go into on that?
With respect, oh yeah, actually there. I could go into a whole other area with this if you want me to. I don't want to overstay my welcome with the court, so
Ms. Clark, I'm just the referee. It's your case.
this is a good time.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon at this time. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations on the matter till it's been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Detective Furman, you're ordered to return here 8:45 tomorrow morning. All right? Thank you, sir. All right, you may step down, sir.